Hello and welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Explore our playlist for more captivating novels, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Sixth Prince of the Great Tang Dynasty. In the Taihei Hall of the Great Tang Dynasty, the Great Tang Emperor Qin Zheng was discussing the fiefdom of the sixth prince Qin Tian with his court officials. The sixth prince Qin Tian was already 16 years old this year, and it was time for him to be granted a fiefdom. But the biggest problem now was that a good fiefdom would not be his turn. After all, the sixth prince Qin Tian came from a humble background. His mother consort was originally a palace maid, but one time Qin Zheng favored her after getting drunk, and coupled with Qin Tian's mother consort being extremely beautiful, the great Tang Emperor Qin Zheng especially doted on her. Qin Tian's mother consort's belly was also particularly cooperative, and she soon became pregnant, giving birth to Qin Tian, this sixth prince of Great Tang. However, it was also because of Qin Zheng's favor that Qin Tian's mother was harmed to death. When Qin Tian was 2 years old, his mother consort was poisoned shortly after giving birth to his sister, and when he was 6, his sister was also poisoned to death by someone. And after Qin Tian's mother consort died, Qin Zheng also ignored the plight of Qin Tian and his sister. The two siblings suffered all sorts of bullying in the imperial palace. Even the female officials around the empress could bully him when they saw him, showing how miserable this sixth prince of Great Tang was. Fortunately, because Qin Tian had the status of a prince, those people did not dare to plot against him, but it was a pity for his sister. At only 4 years old, she was poisoned so openly and grandly. Everything stemmed from him not having a strong background. Since then, Qin Tian's character became timid and hesitant, and Qin Zheng was even more extremely disappointed in this prince, disliking him even more. Just as the officials in the court were discussing Qin Tian's whereabouts, a loud shout interrupted the minister's discussion. Holy crap! What the hell? Qin Tian shouted loudly and jumped up, knocking over several civil officials next to him with this jump. Qin Tian rubbed his head and looked around at the unfamiliar environment. Seeing the officials around him dressed in official robes and holding tablets, Qin Tian was instantly dumbfounded. That's not right. Wasn't I about to be hit by a big truck? And, this isn't right. Wasn't it night? How is it light? Qin Tian looked at the clothes on his body again and found that he didn't know when he had also been changed into a set of clothes. Could it be filming? Qin Tian grabbed the shoulder of a middle-aged man next to him and said, "Brother. What play is this filming?" The old minister whose shoulder was grabbed by Qin Tian said displeased, "Sixth Prince, Your Highness. Please have some self-respect. This is the Taihei Hall. Hee, little guy. You're acting quite well. Sixth Prince, huh? Why don't you say I'm the emperor? This isn't ancient times, brother, you're too deep into the role. Where are the cameras? Where is your director? Come out and explain who brought me here. Where is this? The Forbidden City. Sixth Prince, Your Highness, mind your words. How dare you? Your Majesty. The sixth prince. His words are insolent. By law, he should be executed. Seeing Qin Tian so unruly and disrespectful of etiquette, the ministers all impeached Qin Tian. Looking at the noisy court, Qin Zheng rubbed his brow. An old eunuch beside Qin Zheng saw this and shouted loudly, "Silence." Qin Tian, who was still curiously looking around the environment the second before, was instantly pressed to the ground by a wave of pressure, unable to move, looking quite disheveled. Qin Tian, who was pressed to the ground, was instantly dumbfounded. Holy crap! What's going on? Why can't I move? No. I couldn't have really transmigrated, could I? What year and what dynasty is this? That's not right. Even in whatever year or dynasty, there are no people who know martial arts. This old eunuch just said one sentence and I was pressed to the ground, unable to move. This is clearly the pressure from those web novels. Qin Tian thought that he had now transmigrated, so his public outburst in the Taihei Hall just now was a capital offense. He even said he was the emperor, and he said it in front of the emperor. It's over, it's over. I'm probably finished now. Wait. Did I vaguely hear these people say they wanted me to go to a fiefdom just now? It seems I can use this point, maybe I can even save my life. Just as Qin Tian's thoughts were racing, the pressure on him suddenly disappeared. At this, Qin Tian immediately rolled over and knelt on the ground, saying, "Father Emperor. Just now, your subject thought about how he was about to go to his fiefdom, and was so overly sad and stimulated that he spoke nonsense. Your subject deserves death. After speaking, Qin Tian immediately kowtowed loudly. The crown prince saw this and knew it was his time to perform. So he stepped forward and said, Father Emperor. Sixth brother's character is weak, and he only misspoke in front of the hall because he was stimulated. It is your subject's lacks discipline, and your subject is willing to be punished on behalf of sixth brother. Qin Tian heard this and immediately cursed inwardly, holy crap. This crown prince is so two-faced and scheming. But right now, my life is important, I need to calm down. Qin Tian, who was originally panicking greatly, gradually calmed down. Serving the king is like accompanying a tiger, who knows if this damn emperor will chop him down the next second. The great Tang emperor looked at this farce and couldn't help but rub the bridge of his nose, saying, all right. Your Majesty is tired. Grant the sixth prince the title of Qi Wang. His fiefdom will be West Liang. He will go to his fiefdom on an appointed day. The court is dismissed. Your Majesty, may you live 10,000 years. 10,000 years. 10,000 years. Qin Tian breathed a sigh of relief upon finding his life was saved, and at the same time felt a little lucky. After all, not only was his life saved, but he was also granted the title of Qi Wang. Although Qin Tian didn't know where West Liang was located, it didn't hinder his happiness. No matter what, he was a prince, wasn't he? Moreover, if Qin Tian were really asked to be the emperor, he wouldn't be willing. Working himself to death every day handling state affairs, and still having to scheme and fight with those old foxes in court. Returning to the imperial palace, he would have to face the scheming of the imperial concubines. Being an emperor is not as good as being a dog. Isn't it good to be a Xiaoyao Wang? Why suffer that hardship? As a slacker college student of the 21st century who was still playing games the night before an exam, Qin Tian would definitely not be willing to be some miserable emperor. Wasn't that a joke? Watching the ministers gradually retreat, Qin Tian hummed a song and walked out of the Taihei Hall. Several princes close to the crown prince looked at Qin Tian and laughed, saying, Crown Prince. Look, has old Sixth gone mad? This West Liang is not a good place. It's constantly at war with foreign tribes, and the border guarding generals are all unruly and difficult to control. Although West Liang is vast, its population is only a mere few tens of millions, and the environment there is harsh. With old Sixth's waste body that cannot cultivate, he might freeze to death on the way. Right. Not to mention the endless bandits and robbers along the way. Even if old Sixth gets there, he'll just be a puppet. General Zhao Kuo is fourth brother's person. You never know, he might be killed by General Zhao Kuo as soon as he arrives. The crown prince heard this and deliberately put on a serious face, saying, all right. No matter what, he is your sixth brother. How can you talk about him like that? The princes immediately bowed upon hearing this and said, yes. Imperial brother. Your subject has misspoke. The crown prince nodded and said, it's good that you know. As members of the imperial family, we should cherish our flesh and blood relatives around us, otherwise, where would the dignity of our imperial family be? The princes nodded upon hearing this and said, yes. Imperial brother. Your subject understands. The crown prince looked at these princes who were flattering him, a smirk appeared on his lips, and he left. Chapter 2. Imperial Dynasty Hegemony System. Qin Tian, who had just walked out of Taihei Hall, froze in place because a mechanical voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Ding. Imperial Dynasty Hegemony System activated. Loading. Host, please wait. Listening to the mechanical voice in his mind, Qin Tian immediately became excited. This was a system. An awesome system. It was the kind of existence that could wholesale sky-opening axes. Madly extract Pengu's blood. Greedily absorb Pengu's bone marrow. And even raise Pengu. Qin Tian looked around and found that there was no one present, so he quietly said, System, is that you? There was no response. System. Hello. Hello. Still no response. After struggling for a long time, Qin Tian gave up and decided to wait until the system finished loading. The most pressing matter now was to return to his residence. That's right. Where was my residence? Holy crap. That was careless. Fortunately, Qin Tian spotted a eunuch who happened to be passing by. Qin Tian hurried forward and grabbed him. The eunuch, seeing Qin Tian grabbing him, was instantly scared witless and said, Greetings, Your Highness the Sixth Prince. After speaking, he was about to kneel down. After all, although this Qin Tian was not favored, he was of royal blood, and his status was far higher than that of a little eunuch who did odd jobs. Seeing the eunuch about to kneel, Qin Tian immediately supported him and said, "All right. Now immediately take me back to my sleeping quarters." "Yes, Your Highness." Qin Tian was only 16 this year, so he hadn't moved out of the imperial palace yet. After all, in the Great Tang Dynasty, unfavored princes generally had to go to their feudal territories upon reaching 16. If they were arranged a mansion as well, it would be a bit of a waste. Furthermore, the Great Tang Dynasty's national treasury was currently empty, with years of war and continuous disasters. Therefore, based on the principle of saving wherever possible, they did not arrange a mansion for him in the imperial city. Led by the eunuch, Qin Tian walked for a full 2 hours before returning to his sleeping quarters. Calling it sleeping quarters was misleading, it was actually a dilapidated small courtyard in a remote area of the imperial palace. As soon as he returned to his sleeping quarters, Qin Tian's 2 maidservants came out to greet him. These were all spies sent by other factions to monitor him. After all, as a prince, Qin Tian didn't know how many maidservants by his side had already died, and they all died due to various accidents. Qin Tian looked at the surrounding environment, then waved his hand and said, "All right, you can go back now." The little eunuch bowed upon hearing this and said, "This humble servant takes leave." With the service of the 2 palace maids, Qin Tian removed his heavy court robes and lay on the straw mat. Looking at the palace maids who had exited, Qin Tian complained, "Holy crap. It's just an imperial palace, isn't it? Why build it so big? It's exhausting me." Qin Tian, after gulping down a mouthful of tea, quickly got up and ran to the bookshelf to start researching materials. After all, before doing anything, one must grasp first-hand information, otherwise, they would be completely in the dark. Running to the bookshelf, Qin Tian found that the characters in these books were all traditional Chinese characters. As a university student majoring in Chinese language and literature, Qin Tian could naturally understand traditional Chinese characters, as his major involved this aspect. Unconsciously, it was already deep into the night. By now, Qin Tian finally had some understanding of this world. The world Qin Tian was in was called Tianshuan continent. This continent was home to myriad races, and it was mainly divided into several great empires. There were the Elf Empire, 10,000 Demon Kingdom, Beastman Empire, and the human clan's 3 great empires, namely the Star Emperor, Ancient Dragon, and Golden Crow 3 great empires. Although the human clan had 3 great empires, they constantly attacked each other, which made the human clan's power appear weak compared to other races. Below the empires were imperial dynasties and dynasties. Every year, dynasties had to pay tribute to imperial dynasties, and imperial dynasties paid tribute to empires. The Great Tang Dynasty was located in the western wilderness of the Tianshuan continent, a place with extremely scarce spiritual energy. To the south was the 10,000 Demons Empire, to the west was the Beastman Empire, and to the east was the Endless Sea. And because it was close to the sea, Great Tang suffered attacks from the sea race every year, and the west would be plundered by the orcs. They suffered heavy losses almost every year, and coupled with the annual tribute, it could be said to be utterly miserable. West Liang, where Qin Tian was heading this time, was the only border area between the Great Tang Dynasty and the Beastman Empire. 40,000 of the most elite troops were stationed there to guard against attacks from the orcs. Zhao Kuo, who was the general guarding the border, was from the Zhao family in Kyoto. His cultivation had reached the mid-stage Grandmaster realm, and even the emperor of the Great Tang Dynasty had to show him some respect. However, the bad news was that Zhao Kuo was a staunch supporter of the 4th prince. If Qin Tian went there, it would be equivalent to delivering himself to his death. Moreover, the 4th prince would never allow anyone to encroach upon his sphere of influence. After all, he was one of the strong contenders for the throne. If the previous Qin Tian had known this news, he would definitely have chosen to run away. After all, only a fool would seek death. But now, with the system, Qin Tian was not afraid of anyone. Whoever dared to provoke him, he would dare to chop them up. Even if Jesus came, he couldn't save them. Qin Tian said so. The cultivation levels of martial artists in the Tianshuan continent, from low to high, were third-rate martial artist, second-rate martial artist, first-rate martial artist. These three realms were also called the body-tempering realm. Above first-rate martial artist was called post-heaven martial artist. Martial artists in this realm could project inner energy outwards, and their destructive power was incomparable. Many experts in the army were at this realm. Above post-heaven were the innate realm and grandmaster realm. Martial artists in the innate realm could be appointed as generals in the army, while grandmasters could be appointed as commanders. According to statistics, there were fewer than 20 grandmaster realm experts in the Great Tang Dynasty. The three greatest experts among them were Lu Zong, the national teacher, Wang Yuzhong, the general, and Guo Zongguan, who was by Qin Zheng's side. The cultivation of these three had reached the peak of the grandmaster realm. Originally, Qin Zheng was also a martial artist of this realm, but an assassination 10 years ago resulted in the complete loss of his cultivation, coupled with years of fatigue, so his health was deteriorating day by day. The travelogue also recorded that there was an old ancestor in the Zongren residence whose cultivation had already reached the Po-Shu realm, but it was unknown whether this was true or false. After all, martial artists in the Po-Shu realm could live for 1,000 years and could fly in the air. They could be described as thousand-year-old flying turtles. The Great Tang Dynasty had lasted for over 1,000 years, so having an old ancestor in the Po-Shu realm should not be a new thing. As for whether there were higher realms above Po-Shu, the travelogue did not record them. Ding. System loading complete. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a novice gift package. Do you wish to extract it? Qin Tian was stunned by the system's notification sound and quickly said, extract. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining one marrow cleansing pill. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining one set of the blazing yellow true dragon technique. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 10,000 taels of gold. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining one famous general summoning card. Ding. Rewards have been issued. Please check as soon as possible, host. Qin Tian directly clicked to open the famous general summoning card. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Zhonghan summoning card. Do you wish to use it? Upon seeing this, Qin Tian directly clicked no. He was currently in the Imperial Palace, a place filled with experts. If summoning caused any commotion, Qin Tian would be completely finished. Therefore, Qin Tian planned to summon him on the day he left the city. After all, in the Imperial City, others would not dare to harm him. Princes were direct descendants of the imperial family. Every prince was registered in the Zongren residence and Tai Temple. If something happened, the Zongren residence would definitely step in to investigate the truth. In this imperial city, there was truly no one who dared to provoke the Zongren residence. After all, the hidden experts of the imperial family were all within the Zongren residence. The Zongren residence was responsible for the continuation of the imperial bloodline. It could be said that even the emperor had to bow his head in front of the Zongren residence. It was precisely because of the protection of the Zongren residence that Qin Tian was able to grow up to this age. Qin Tian looked at the marrow cleansing pill in the system and clicked use. Ding. Marrow cleansing pill used successfully. Immediately afterward, Qin Tian felt a warm current flowing throughout his body. After the medicinal effect passed, Qin Tian's originally thin body had now become fuller. Qin Tian took off his clothes and examined his body in the bronze mirror, finding that his chest muscles had become incredibly strong and his six-pack abs were clearly defined. Chapter 3. Arriving at West Liang. Looking at his body in the bronze mirror, Qin Tian immediately started touching himself up and down. After all, no man could resist the temptation of big muscles. After admiring himself for a while, Qin Tian silently said to the system again, extract the Yanwang True Dragon Art. Ding. Extraction successful. Already automatically implanted for the host. With the implantation of the cultivation technique, Qin Tian's cultivation level instantly rose from third-rate martial artist to second-rate martial artist, and kept rising until it stopped at first-rate martial artist. Looking at his cultivation level soaring to the peak of first-rate martial artist, Qin Tian couldn't help but laugh and say, this system is really awesome. I like it. However, I still need to keep a low profile for now, and Zhonghan cannot be exposed either. Qin Tian plans to keep him as a trump card. Yanwang True Dragon Art, an Earth-rank high-grade cultivation technique that will evolve as the national destiny strengthens. Within its territory, the cultivation technique automatically cultivates. Looking at the introduction of this cultivation technique, Qin Tian gasped. He now knew that the cultivation techniques in this world were divided into 4 grades: heaven, earth, mysterious, and yellow. If people from the outside world knew that he had an earth-rank high-grade cultivation technique in his hands, then the surrounding dynasty powers would definitely directly seize it. Because earth-rank high-grade cultivation techniques are rare treasures on the Tianshuan continent. Those who can possess earth-rank high-grade cultivation techniques are at least at the 4th rank or above, which shows how precious earth-rank cultivation techniques are. However, what excited Qin Tian the most was that his cultivation technique could cultivate on its own and would even evolve as the national destiny strengthened. Wasn't this forcing Qin Tian to invade others? Qin Tian shook his head, lay down on the bed, and fell asleep. Late at night, Crown Prince's residence. Crown Prince Qin Yu was looking at his advisors, plotting how to bring down the 4th prince. After all, the 4th prince, with his military background, was the Crown Prince's most powerful competitor. As long as the 4th prince was dealt with, the other princes were just minor characters to the Crown Prince, who could be easily crushed with a single slap. Looking at the national teacher sitting in front of him, the Crown Prince said, "National teacher, that good-for-nothing Qin Tian is going to his fief the day after tomorrow. Should we make a move to get rid of that good-for-nothing and then frame the 4th prince? This can also be considered making good use of a good-for-nothing. After all, that good-for-nothing said today that he wanted to be emperor." The national teacher said, "Your Highness, Crown Prince, please be patient. You don't need to make a move on this matter. The 4th prince will do it himself. We just need to watch the tigers fight from the mountain. Now that your Majesty's health is deteriorating day by day, this is a critical period. It's better for us not to make too much of a fuss." Early the next morning, Qin Tian received the notification that he was to set off for West Liang tomorrow to take up his fiefdom. Looking at the imperial decree in his hand, Qin Tian muttered, "It's finally here. I can't wait." Early the next morning, Qin Tian was escorted out of the imperial city by a few hundred soldiers. As soon as he left the city, Qin Tian used the summon card in his hand. Ding! Successfully used Marshal General summon card. Do you want him to follow secretly? Seeing this, Qin Tian couldn't help but laugh and say, "This system is really quite user-friendly. It has arranged everything for me." Without a word, Qin Tian directly clicked yes. He now wanted to see what tricks this person could play. Qin Tian directly opened Zhang Han's attribute card. Name: Zhang Han. Cultivation: Peak Grandmaster. Cultivation technique: Shadow Demon Art. Earth rank high grade. Can be upgraded. Physique: Shadow Demon Body. Talent: Stealth. When activated, it can evade the detection of cultivators 2 major ranks higher than his own cultivation. Troop type: 800 Shadow Guard. Early innate. Looking at Zhang Han's attributes, Qin Tian was greatly surprised. One must know that Zhang Han's 2 great innate skills were skills that every assassin dreamed of. Moreover, what surprised Qin Tian the most was that he even came with a troop type, the Shadow Guard, who were like shadows. Qin Tian had heard that phrase like thunder in his ears. With these 800 Shadow Guard, Qin Tian had a few more points of confidence in this trip. The guards responsible for escorting Qin Tian were all experts selected from the Imperial Guards. The lowest cultivation level among these few hundred people was at the first-rate martial artist realm, and the leader, Zhang Hu, had already reached the early innate stage. These people were the 4th prince's most loyal subordinates, and the order they received was to deal with Qin Tian at 30-mile slope. Because 30-mile slope was far from the imperial city and sparsely populated, it was the best time to make a move. The army marched for 4 or 5 days. Qin Tian, sitting in the carriage, felt his buttocks were about to split into several pieces. Coupled with the extremely fast marching speed of this Imperial Guard unit, it seemed as if they wouldn't rest until they had shaken Qin Tian to death. As night fell, Zhang Hu came to Qin Tian's carriage and said, "Your Highness, King Qi, we have arrived at 30-mile slope. We will rest here tonight, and your subordinate feels that this place is most suitable as your burial ground. What do you think?" Qin Tian got out of the carriage and looked around the surroundings, saying, "The environment here is not bad, it is indeed quite suitable as a burial ground." But I wonder if you have ever heard a saying, villains die from talking too much. As Qin Tian finished speaking, a sharp blade slashed across Zhang Hu's neck. At the same time, the accompanying imperial guards were almost all slit at the throat by the shadow guard at the same time. Looking at Zhang Hu on the ground, his eyes wide open and his legs twitching, Qin Tian said, "Remember, be a good person in your next life." Zhang Hu clutched his neck and twitched his legs a few times before losing his breath. A figure appeared like a ghost in front of Qin Tian, kneeling on one knee and saying, "Your subordinate Zhang Han pays his respects to your highness, King Qi. Get up. Tell your men to deal with this place, then change into the imperial guard's clothes and come with me to West Liang. As for the remaining people, you will take them to West Liang first tomorrow. I want to hear that you have taken control of the Ziliang army before I arrive at West Liang. As for that Zhao 40,000, I will leave him for me to send him on his way." "Yes, your highness. Your subordinate will go and do it now." After Qin Tian finished speaking, he returned to his tent. As soon as he returned to the tent, Qin Tian couldn't hold back and immediately started vomiting wildly. Hearing the commotion, Zhang Han rushed to the front of the tent and said, "Your highness. Are you all right?" "No. I'm fine." "Ah." Hearing the commotion in the tent, Zhang Han seemed to have thought of something, shook his head, and said, "Then your subordinate will take his leave." 5 months passed in a flash, and Qin Tian finally arrived at West Liang after a hurried journey. It must be said that the territory of the great Tang Dynasty was truly vast. It took Qin Tian 5 months to reach West Liang. As expected, it was worthy of being a country with a population of 13 billion. Looking at the city walls of Shi Liang city not far away, Qin Tian couldn't help but smile knowingly. After 5 months of long travel, Qin Tian finally arrived at West Liang. Along the way, Qin Tian truly witnessed what it meant for the rich to have wine and meat while the poor froze to death on the roadside. Along the way, Qin Tian saw too many human tragedies, which were happening almost every moment in this world. Due to years of war, West Liang was devastated, with 9 out of 10 houses empty. West Liang was the border between the Great Tang Dynasty and the Orc tribes. Since the Orcs' territory was mostly Gobi grassland, when winter came, the heavy snow covered all the grassland. Every winter, the Orc tribes would lack clothing and food, and many ordinary beastmen would freeze to death. Therefore, after each autumn harvest, the beastmen would go south to plunder. Moreover, the bodies of the orc were much stronger than those of the human clan. Once war broke out, it often required 4 or 5 people to kill one orc on horseback. Another very important reason why the orc tribes went south to plunder was that they needed to reduce their population. Because as beastmen, they inherited the characteristics of beasts, which was being particularly fertile. The pigmen tribe could give birth to a dozen or more at a time, and because they had thick skin and flesh, as long as they had food, they could basically grow up. Therefore, every time a city was attacked, it was led by the old beastmen who charged forward. Qin Tian looked at the city walls, nearly 50 meters high and extending for several kilometers. As the main city of West Liang, Shi Liang city alone had over 100,000 defenders, and the densely packed demon-breaking ballista on the city walls were chilling. Although the orc tribes produced iron ore and coal, they were not very intelligent and did not know how to make precise iron tools. And some merchants from the Central Plains, through their relationship with the Zhao family, sold weapons and salt from within the pass to the orc tribes. Although the orc tribes were called tribes, their population was not small. A small tribe had a population of tens of millions, and a large one even reached 2 to 300 million. The orc tribes located in the Gobi grassland had a huge demand for salt. Because their bodies were strong and their metabolism was fast, they needed a large amount of salt to maintain basic life. Looking at the blood-stained city walls, Qin Tian watched Zhang Han leading several armored men behind him, jogging to Qin Tian and saying, "Your subordinate Zhang Han pays his respects to your highness, King Qi." The generals of the Ziliang army behind Zhang Han also knelt down one after another and said, "Your subordinates pay their respects to your highness, King Qi." Qin Tian looked at the kneeling crowd and said, "All of you, rise. No need for formalities." Upon hearing this, the generals quickly stood up, cupped their fists, and said, "Thank you, your highness." Chapter 4. Obtaining the beginner gift package. Qin Tian looked at Zhang Han and said, "What about Zhao Kuo?" Reporting to your highness, Zhao Kuo has been detained by your general in the rear, awaiting your highness's disposition. No need, just bring him over. I'll deal with him right here. Zhang Han shouted towards the rear, bring him up. Immediately, Zhao Kuo was brought over, tied up with 5 flowers, looking barely human. Qin Tian looked at him and said, all right. I'll let you off the hook. Immediately, Qin Tian drew the treasure saber from Zhang Han's waist and cut off Zhao Kuo's head with one strike. As Zhao Kuo's head fell, a spray of fresh blood splattered onto Qin Tian's face. Qin Tian handed the saber to Zhang Han, then took a tissue handed by a shadow guard, wiped the blood off his face, and said, clean this up, let's enter the city. Qin Tian, who had just killed someone, found himself calmer than he expected. Although he still felt a bit uncomfortable, it wasn't enough to make him vomit uncontrollably like 3 months ago. Qin Tian did this for only one purpose, and that was to quickly adapt to this world. Because in this world where strength reigns supreme, many such things would still happen. Since he couldn't change the environment, he would change himself. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining his first territory. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the beginner great gift package. Ding! System shop is open. Ding! Mission system is open. Having just killed someone, Qin Tian was not in the mood to check the system information. He just hurriedly took a few people back to the city lord's mansion. Qin Tian sat in the main seat and looked at Zhang Han below, saying, Zhang Han. Your general is here. Tell me about the situation here. Zhang Han stepped forward and handed the list to Qin Tian, saying, reporting to your highness, the Ziliang army had a total of 400,000 troops. The garrison forces of the 4 main cities and 53 small cities under its command, totaling 760,000 men, have now all been brought under your general's control. Besides confiscating the city lord's mansion this time, your general also arrested a total of 619 merchants who colluded with the enemy, confiscated 20,000 low-grade spirit stones, 4 million taels of gold, 50 million taels of silver, and confiscated goods worth 30 million taels of silver. Salt and weapons accounted for 80%, and the rest were daily necessities. Qin Tian shook his head and looked at Zhang Han, saying, dispose of all the ringleaders among those merchants, and exile the rest to perform Korva copyright e-labor. Let them repair the city walls and open up wasteland. Currently, disasters are rampant, and the people of the world are displaced, resorting to cannibalism. After the spring plowing, West Liang will recruit displaced people from all over the country. However, the main threat at present is the beastmen, so Zhang Han, you must constantly be vigilant against the orc moving south. I will allocate 700 shadow guard to you. West Liang has suffered from war for a long time, and I hope to be the one to end this tragedy. Zhang Han and the others cupped their fists upon hearing this and said, Your Highness is wise. All right. You all may withdraw. I am also tired. Your general takes leave. Watching the figures of the few people leaving, Qin Tian walked back to his room, lay on the bed, and brought up the system interface. System. Open the beginner great gift package. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 1 Peerless Martial General's summoning card. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 1 Peerless Martial General's summoning card. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 1 Peerless Martial General's summoning card. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Yan Yun 18 Riders summoning card. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Civil Official Great Gift Package. Holy crap. It exploded. A big explosion. Holy crap. System is awesome. Qin Tian looked at the rewards given by the system and immediately jumped up from the bed. Qin Tian, who was originally worried about the orc moving south, suddenly became excited. Now Qin Tian had to start considering whether to take the initiative to attack. Use all the summoning cards. Ding. Usage successful. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Peerless Martial Generals La 1/4 BU. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Peerless Martial Generals Meng Tian. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Peerless Martial Generals Bai Qi. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Special Troop Yan Yun 18 Riders. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Peerless Civil Official Feng Xuanling. Qin Tian suppressed his excited feelings and opened the attributes of the few martial generals. Name, La 1/4 BU. Cultivation, Peak Grandmaster. Cultivation method, Burning Blood Devil Body. Earth rank high grade. Can be upgraded. Physique, Burning Blood Devil Body. Talent, Burning Blood. Active skill, directly increases combat power threefold when activated. Resilience, active skill, reduces internal energy output by 2/3 when activated. Troops, 100,000 Ziliang Iron Cavalry. Minimum cultivation is postnatal initial stage. Name, Bai Qi. Cultivation, Peak Grandmaster. Cultivation method, Bloodthirst Devil Art. Earth rank high grade. Can be upgraded. Physique, Bloodthirst Devil Body. Talent, Bloodthirst. Passive skill, can absorb 1% of the cultivation of a killed target. Combat power is higher the more severe the injury. When this skill is activated at the cost of life, cultivation can be directly increased by 3 major stages. Devour. Active skill, can generate 8 chains within the body, which can devour half of the cultivation of a hit target. Ski. Qi Evil Energy. Active skill, reduces enemy attack power by 30% when activated. Troops, 100,000 Great Qin Elite Soldiers. Minimum cultivation is postnatal initial stage. Name, Meng Tian. Cultivation, Peak Grandmaster. Cultivation method, Fire Cloud Art. Earth rank high grade. Can be upgraded. Physique, Fire Cloud Body. Talent, Battle. Active skill, can gather the strength of the entire army into one body to unleash a fatal blow when activated. Troops, 100,000 Golden Fire Cavalry. Minimum cultivation is postnatal initial stage. Special Troop, Yan Yun 18 Riders. Cultivation, Late Grandmaster. Cultivation method, Yan Yun Art. Earth rank high grade. Can be upgraded. Physique, Yan Yun Body. Talent, Yan Yun Formation. Active skill, when there is one more person in the formation, each person's strength will be enhanced by 50%. The minimum number of people required to activate the formation is 1. Qin Tian gasped as he looked at the fierce martial generals he had obtained. He hadn't expected these martial generals to not only have extraordinary talents but also their own special troops. Qin Tian suppressed the excitement in his heart and clicked on the civil official's attribute panel. Name, Fang Xuanling. Cultivation, Initial Grandmaster. Cultivation method, Cloud Saint Art. Earth rank high grade. Can be upgraded. Physique, none. Talent, Fang's Scheme. Active skill, can increase the efficiency of handling government affairs threefold when activated. Can increase the success rate of strategizing by 30%. After closing the attribute panels of all the characters, Qin Tian took a few deep breaths and finally calmed down his excited mood. At this moment, Zhang Han walked in, cupped his fists, and said, "Reporting to Your Highness. An additional 300,000 troops have suddenly appeared outside Xiliang City. They claim to be Your Highness's subordinates. The few letting generals are currently knocking on the city gate." Qin Tian's eyes lit up upon hearing this, and he immediately said, "Ha ha ha. They're finally here. Let's go. Xiao Rong. We'll go greet them together." Yes. After saying that, Qin Tian walked directly out the door, climbed onto the back of a warhorse, and galloped towards the outside of the city. As the city gate opened, several sturdy figures appeared before Qin Tian. "Your general. La 1/4 BU, Meng Tian, Bai Qi. Greetings to Your Highness." Qin Tian looked at the 3 people kneeling on the ground before him and hurriedly stepped forward to help them up, laughing, "All you generals are my beloved generals. There's no need for such courtesy. Please rise quickly. Your humble official. Fang Xuanling pays respects to Your Highness." Seeing Fang Xuanling in a green robe kneeling before him, Qin Tian hurriedly stepped forward to help him up and said, "Zichao, there's no need for such courtesy. Please rise quickly." Just as Qin Tian helped Fang Xuanling up, he heard a dense sound of horse hooves. La 1/4 BU directly held his Fang Tian halberd horizontally, and immediately, killing intent surged as he roared, "Who goes there?" After seeing clearly who had arrived, Qin Tian placed his hand on La 1/4 BU's shoulder and said with a smile, "Feng Xian, don't worry. They are my subordinates." After dismounting, the Yan Yun 18 riders walked up to Qin Tian and half knelt, saying, "Yan Da." Leading the Yan Yun 18 riders. "Greetings to Your Highness, King Qi." Lo 1/4 Bu and the other martial generals looked at the Yan Yun 18 riders half kneeling before Qin Tian, their eyes filled with deep apprehension. The martial general's intuition told them that these 18 masked individuals were very dangerous. Ha ha ha. Rise, all of you. No need for courtesy, no need for courtesy. Qin Tian felt an indescribable satisfaction looking at the people before him. Qin Tian laughed, with the support of all you gentlemen, your majesty can rest easy. Come, let's all enter the city. Your majesty will host a banquet to welcome you. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 5. Exterminating the Aristocratic Families. Night fell. Returning to his room, Qin Tian opened the system store to check the goods inside. He found that the goods inside were only some ordinary items, such as grain and some slightly better Zon-grade iron weapons, and the price was only 10% cheaper than on the market. Although there weren't many goods, Qin Tian was still quite satisfied, as the horses of his cavalry were extraordinary, comparable to first-rate martial artists, and they needed to eat meat. Initially, this gave Qin Tian a headache, as his soldiers' storage bags only contained half a month's worth of provisions, and after half a month, the provisions for the 200,000 cavalry in Qin Tian's hands would be a huge problem. After all, a warhorse could eat over 50 catties of meat a day to maintain its combat strength, and 200,000 horses would need to eat 10 million catties of meat a day. Based on the system store's rate of 1 tael of silver for 100 catties of meat, 200,000 warhorses would consume 100,000 taels of silver a day, but money wasn't the problem was where to find enough meat to feed the warhorses. Therefore, ordinary people truly couldn't afford to raise this cavalry, and the money in Qin Tian's hands couldn't support them for too long either. Thus, Qin Tian's current mission was to make money. Make a lot of money. So, the question was, who had money? Without a doubt, it was the aristocratic families. Therefore, Qin Tian decided to target the aristocratic families. The exchange rate in the system was 1 low-grade spirit stone for 10,000 taels of gold, and 1 tael of gold for 100 taels of silver. Of course, the system also supported exchanging minerals for equivalent spiritual stones or gold and silver, but the system charged a 30% handling fee, which made Qin Tian exclaim, "What a profiteer." After looking at the system store, Qin Tian opened the task system and found there were only 4 main quests. The primary task was to own a territory of his own, the intermediate task was to establish a dynasty, the advanced task was to establish an imperial dynasty, and the special task was to establish an empire. Currently, there were only 2 side quests. One was to completely control West Liang, and the other was to completely quell the beastmen's chaos. The first task coincided with Qin Tian's current plan. The biggest cancer within West Liang was not the mountain bandits and brigands, but the aristocratic families. Within West Liang alone, there were dozens of aristocratic families, big and small. They raised private armies and monopolized the market. They were the cancer of this dynasty, but due to their formidable strength, successive rulers had been deeply wary of them. However, Qin Tian also intended to follow Emperor Qianlong's example. Pigs, once fattened, must eventually be slaughtered. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed. During this half-month, Bai Qi reorganized the original Ziliang army, reducing the original 400,000 Ziliang army to only 300,000. The current Ziliang army could be considered true elites. Their treatment had also greatly improved, increasing from 1 tael of silver per month to 3 taels. This was the military expenditure saved after Bai Qi rectified military discipline. Qin Tian distributed all the saved money to the soldiers, which instantly boosted Qin Tian's prestige within the Ziliang army. In this half-month, Bai Qi led the reorganized Ziliang army to completely eliminate all bandits within the territory, achieving countless gains. Just among the bandits, nearly 100,000 were directly slaughtered. Bai Qi had not the slightest tolerance for these criminals whose hands were stained with fresh blood. Meanwhile, during this half-month, Qin Tian devoted himself to improving the people's livelihood, building toilets, prohibiting public defecation and urination on the streets, with offenders receiving 50 military strokes. Not only that, Qin Tian also abolished the poll tax, kitchen tax, and the 1/10 agricultural tax, increased the commercial tax, and stipulated a 3/10 tax rate. Qin Tian also divided the noble families into 3 categories, requiring them to pay a certain amount of spiritual stones or money monthly each year. One must know that spiritual stones were only used by experts above the innate realm. Qin Tian stipulated that any noble family with at least one innate realm expert must pay one spiritual stone or 10,000 taels of gold each month. Grandmaster realm experts had to pay 10 stones, which could be paid monthly or annually. One must know that although the great Tang Dynasty did not have many grandmasters, there were quite a few innate realm experts. Every noble family in West Liang basically had a few innate realm martial artists to maintain their facade. Qin Tian's policy caused an uproar. The people of the entire West Liang were jubilant, but the noble families remained silent. Today was the tax collection day stipulated by Qin Tian. Qin Tian sat in the city lord's manor's reception hall, reviewing official documents. Because it was an extraordinary period, Qin Tian intended to handle things personally. Fang Xuanling was not adept at suppressing aristocratic families, so Qin Tian decided to do it himself. Once a system was established, he would hand it over to Fang Xuanling, and then Qin Tian would be free. Just as Qin Tian was reviewing the official documents, a disheveled figure ran up to Qin Tian, knelt down, and said, "Reporting to Your Highness. The people we sent to collect taxes from the major aristocratic families have all been beaten back, and several were severely injured." Qin Tian, who was reviewing official documents, heard this and his eyes lit up. The reason he sent ordinary tax collectors was that he knew the nature of the major aristocratic families. This was a perfect excuse to seize the opportunity to eliminate them, as the strength of the aristocratic families in the great Tang Dynasty was not to be underestimated. Therefore, Qin Tian had to find an excuse to directly clear out these aristocratic families, which also served as killing the chicken to warn the monkeys. Excellent. Lord Fang. Your subject is here. Pass down the order. Let Bai Qi be responsible for eliminating those disobedient aristocratic families. Just say that I want to inspect the results of his troop training. The shadow guard will assist from the side. Starting today, I want West Liang to have only one voice. Yes, Your Highness. As Qin Tian's order was issued, waves of bloody storms were stirred up throughout West Liang. On this day, the entire West Liang was destined to become a river of blood. At night, Bai Qi, covered in blood and carrying his treasured sword, walked into Qin Tian's city lord's manor. Reporting to Your Highness. The bandit leaders have been executed. In this battle, my division suffered over 46,000 casualties, eliminated over 268,000 enemies, including 8 Grandmaster Realm martial artists and 161 innate realm experts. Over 3,000 female dependents were captured. 600,000 spiritual stones, 30 million taels of gold, and 900 million taels of silver were seized. Their properties and spiritual fields are currently being counted. This time, 109 Zon-grade cultivation methods and martial skills, and 3,614 yellow-grade cultivation methods and martial skills were seized. Qin Tian gasped upon hearing this. These aristocratic families were truly wealthy. The annual tax revenue of the Great Tang Dynasty was only 20 million taels of silver. West Liang, being merely one province, was this wealthy, so how rich must the aristocratic families in Kyoto be? Thinking of this, Qin Tian quickly wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth and said, "Very good. General Bai, this battle was fought beautifully. Give a generous burial to the fallen soldiers. Reward every soldier who participated in the battle based on their merits. Remember to give double the resettlement fee." Bai Qi heard this and bowed his head, saying, "Your general obeys the order." General Bai, you must be tired after fighting all day. Go and rest first. Tomorrow, I will hold a banquet to reward the army. Your general thanks Your Highness. As Bai Qi exited the hall, the system's voice sounded in Qin Tian's mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the side quest. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining 10,000 mu of spiritual fields. Please select the location as soon as possible. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining 10,000 mu of dragon tooth rice seeds. Ding! Congratulations to the host for increased luck. Territory spiritual energy doubled. The very next second after the system finished its notification, Qin Tian immediately felt the spiritual energy around him become much denser. His cultivation speed, which had been as slow as a snail after breaking through to the Haodian martial artist realm, increased by nearly 3 times at this moment. He believed he could enter the mid-Haodian stage within 2 months. Qin Tian clicked to view the attributes of the spiritual fields and dragon tooth rice. Spiritual field shortens the growth speed of spiritual plants by 3/4. Dragon tooth rice ripens once a year, entirely valuable. The rice grains are rich in spiritual energy. Martial artists can speed up their cultivation after eating them. Dragon tooth rice bran is excellent feed for raising spiritual beasts. Chapter 6. Orc Invasion, First Battle Victory. The next day, Qin Tian led his army, Zhang Han, and Bai Qi, to a wasteland outside the city. Qin Tian opened the system interface and chose to place the spiritual field here. Immediately after, he said, Bai Qi. Zhang Han. Your general is here. I order you two to mobilize 3,000 Great Qin elite soldiers and 50 shadow guards to be responsible for managing this farmland. Enclose this area. Anyone who dares to approach will be killed without mercy. Your general receives the order. Following this, Qin Tian left behind the dragon tooth rice seeds and immediately returned to Xiliang city. This was because, just this morning, Qin Tian had received a secret report from the Shadow Guard stating that the orc were gathering 1,000,000 beastmen troops to march south and plunder. When Qin Tian returned to Xiliang city, he found that La 1/4 Bu and Meng Tian had already been waiting for a long time. Qin Tian looked at them and said, I believe you have already received the news that the orc are about to march south. I will make this brief. I want you to immediately return and reorganize your troops, and set off immediately for the grasslands. Fang Xuanling will be responsible for staying behind in the rear and coordinating everything. Upon hearing this, Fang Xuanling immediately stood up and said, Yes, Your Highness. Fengxian. Meng Tian. You two are leading cavalry. I want you to immediately set off and directly penetrate the rear of the orc army. Upon hearing this, La 1/4 Bu and Meng Tian immediately stood up and said, Your general receives the order. As for General Bai, he will lead 200,000 Ziliang army and 100,000 Great Qin elite soldiers and advance with me out of Yumun Pass. In this battle, we will annihilate all invading enemies on the grasslands. After Qin Tian finished speaking, a sharp glint burst forth from his eyes. It was currently the autumn harvest season. If the orc army were allowed to march south, the people of Xiliang would suffer heavy losses, and who knows how many people would starve to death this winter. Therefore, Qin Tian had to stop the orc army outside Yumun Pass. Yumun Pass is the gateway for the orc to enter Xiliang. There are 5,000 Ziliang army troops stationed there year-round, and the city walls are very sturdy. Lacking siege weapons, the orc can only pay a heavy price each time to tie down the defenders of Yumun Pass, and then divide their forces to plunder south. The one attacking Xiliang is the Huli tribe of the orc. The Huli tribe is a large tribe, with a population exceeding 830 million. Not only that, but the Huli tribe also controls 13 smaller tribes, so the population controlled by the Huli tribe reaches nearly 1.3 billion. Every year when the orc army marches south, the great Tang Dynasties Xiliang, Shuzhou, Jinzhou, and Mianzhou are plundered. The annual loss is nearly 100 million taels of silver. However, due to its geographical location and being attacked on 3 sides, the great Tang Dynasty has absolutely no way to deal with this. This time, the ones responsible for plundering south for the orc are the brothers Huli Chang and Huliang. They are the 2 most outstanding sons of the Huli tribe's leader, one is a tiger man and the other is a lion man. Both have human bodies and beast heads, and their cultivation has reached the peak of the Grandmaster realm. And the Huli tribe's leader's cultivation has reached the Po Shu realm, but because he rarely makes a move, the outside world does not know his specific strength. Hu Liang looked at the distant Yumun Pass and laughed, the great Tang Dynasty's pass is built truly majestically. And look, the weapons in their hands are much better than ours. Heaven is truly unfair, letting the weak human clan occupy such fertile land, while we orc can only live in the desolate grasslands. Hu Li Chang heard this and said, Yes. Heaven is too unfair, giving us beastmen strong physiques, but taking away our intelligent brains. The orc were originally the lowest level of slaves on this Tianshuan continent, because as a species hybridized from ancient humans and monster race, they were disliked by both human clan and monster race, so they were expelled to this barren Gobi Desert. But 10,000 years ago, the Beastman Emperor appeared out of nowhere and created cultivation methods and martial techniques suitable for the orc, which allowed the status of the Beastman to improve, and also seized back some fertile land. However, some beastmen with low bloodlines are still intellectually inferior, such as the Minotaurs. Inside Yumun Pass, Qin Tian looked at the rolling dust in the distance and knew that the orc army had arrived. Just now, Qin Tian heard the scouts say that the orc army was 50 li away from Yumun Pass. How long has it been? And they are already here. Not long after, Qin Tian saw the orcs' vanguard troops. Holy crap! Minotaurs! Qin Tian couldn't help but exclaim, looking at the Minotaurs who were 3 to nearly 4 meters tall, holding giant axes in their hands, and wearing leather armor. After all, this was the first time Qin Tian had seen a real Minotaur, and he had admired Minotaurs for a long time. Just as Qin Tian was sizing up the orc troops, the orcs' vanguard troops had already stopped 10 li in front of Yumun Pass. After the dust settled, Qin Tian saw the full picture of this troop. This vanguard team was composed of about 300,000 people, and there were many types of beastmen among them, including centaurs, pigmen, minotaurs, and dogmen. You know, this is not anime. The appearance of male orc is very ugly. Take the centaurs for example, compared to those in anime, it is simply a world of difference. Basically, whatever color the horse body is, the upper part of the human body is that color. For the pigmen, you can refer to Zubaji. As for the dogmen who are spear soldiers, it's even more so, their entire bodies are covered in fur, exactly like the werewolves of his previous life, except that their limbs are the same as humans. As the dust settled, a centaur at the peak of the innate realm, holding a silver spear, came in front of Yumun Pass and shouted, "Human defender on Yumun Pass, come down and accept death." Listening to the beastmen knocking on the pass below, the subordinate generals under Bai Qi's command all requested to fight. Your Highness. Feng Luo. Requests to fight. Your Highness. Wang Lei requests to fight. ... Looking at these several subordinate generals at the peak of the innate realm, they were fiercely requesting to fight. Qin Tian and Bai Qi exchanged smiles. Qin Tian looked at the well-organized orc army in front of him and laughed. Feng Luo, then you go down and bring back the head of that bandit general for me to sacrifice to the flag. Upon hearing this, Feng Luo said with an excited expression, "Thank you, Your Highness. Your general will definitely slay the enemy general under his horse." After receiving the order, Feng Luo eagerly led 1,000 great Qin elite soldiers and 3,000 Ziliang army out of the city to kill the enemy. Feng Luo looked at the centaur in front of him and shouted, "Bandit general, accept death." Looking at Feng Luo charging towards him on horseback, the orc vanguard also charged towards Feng Luo. Just as the two were about to close in, Feng Luo's Feng Tian halberd in his hand swept horizontally. Seeing this powerful horizontal sweep, the orc vanguard had no choice but to passively defend. Feng Luo controlled the warhorse beneath him and engaged in a fierce battle with the orc vanguard. After dozens of rounds of fighting, Feng Luo cut off the head of the orc vanguard. After succeeding, Feng Luo shouted at the enemy formation, "Who else wants to come up and accept death?" A dogman riding a warhorse charged towards Feng Luo and shouted, "I, Doghead, will meet you." Then the two sides began to fight. After 200 rounds, Doghead was slain under the horse. After two major battles, Feng Luo's physical strength and internal energy were almost depleted, so he had the idea of retreating. Qin Tian also saw that Feng Luo's condition was not very good, so he sounded the gong to withdraw the troops. As for the orc, due to successive defeats, their morale had dropped to rock bottom. Na Za, the Leopardman vanguard general responsible for attacking Yumun Pass, saw this and did not pursue, because the successive loss of two great generals made him heartbroken, so he chose to fight again tomorrow. Chapter 7. Annihilation of the Orc Vanguard Battalion. Feng Luo, returning from a great victory, received a warm reception from Qin Tian. Late at night in Qin Tian's military tent, Qin Tian looked at the sand table on the desk and said, "I just received news that La 1/4 Bu and Meng Tian's troops have quickly moved to the enemy's rear. According to the scouts' intelligence, the beastmen have dispatched a massive army of a full 1,200,000 soldiers this time. Led by two generals at the peak of the Grandmaster realm, Hu Liqiang and Hu Liang, the 300,000 troops in front of us are led by Na Za of the Leopard Beastman clan, who is at the early stage of the Grandmaster realm. Now the time is ripe. We must swiftly devour these 300,000 vanguard troops with the speed of thunder, and then lure the enemy's main force here. Then, we will annihilate the entire enemy force in front of Yumun Pass." The goal this time is to capture the two brothers, Hu Liqiang and Hu Liang, alive. The enemy's main force will arrive in a few days, so I have decided to raid their camp tonight. That Na Za would never have thought that the great Tang garrison, which has always only cowered within Yumun Pass, would take the initiative to attack. Tonight's operation is bound to achieve a great victory. Wang Lei, your general is here. You will lead 20,000 Great Qin elite soldiers and 30,000 Ziliang army troops to bypass the enemy camp from the west tonight, launching an attack precisely at midnight. Your general obeys. Bai Qi, your general is here. You will lead 30,000 Great Qin elite soldiers and 40,000 Ziliang army troops to bypass the enemy's rear, launching an attack simultaneously. Your general obeys. Qin Tian deployed 30,000 troops on both the east and west sides. The remaining 20,000 Ziliang army infantry and 50,000 Yumun Pass garrison troops would launch a frontal assault along with 30,000 Great Qin elite soldiers. The remaining 100,000 Ziliang cavalry were divided into 4 groups by Qin Tian to hunt down the fleeing orc soldiers on the periphery. At night, just as the orc sentries finished their shift change, they were slit in the throat by a dagger that suddenly appeared behind them. Behind a small hill 5 miles away from the orc army, Qin Tian, clad in iron armor and guarded by the Yan Yun 18 riders, rode his horse and gazed at the distant orc main camp from the hilltop. Zhang Han suddenly appeared behind Qin Tian, cupping his fist, and said, "Your Highness. All enemy sentries have been cleared. You've worked hard. The moon is full tonight." After speaking, Qin Tian looked up at the high-hanging full moon, then directly waved his hand backward, and the army behind him surged straight towards the enemy's main camp. At the same time, the armies lying in ambush on all 4 sides almost simultaneously received the signal and slowly approached the orc main camp. When the army advanced to within 300 meters of the orc main camp, the sword and shield soldiers ran to the front one after another, forming a shield formation. The archers strung their bows and crossbows one after another. As the signal arrow soared into the sky, the archers began their first volley. The sleeping Na Za was awakened by the signal arrow. He had never imagined that the great Tang army, which has always cowered within Yumun Pass and never launched an attack, would choose to raid the camp tonight. However, he also knew this was not the time to dwell on it. So he rushed out of his tent and shouted, "Enemy attack!" But in the next second, a dense rain of arrows followed immediately. Followed by the second wave. The third wave. The rain of arrows from all directions caused heavy losses to the orc troops. After several volleys, the orcs had already suffered over 30,000 casualties. Fire arrows ignited all the orc tents. Looking at the chaotic military camp, Na Za knew he was powerless to turn the tide, so he conceived the idea of retreating. But in the next second, a black long saber slashed across his throat, and Na Za's head immediately disappeared. Seeing this scene, Na Za's personal guards were so scared they almost peed their pants. After the last wave of arrows was shot, the remaining 260,000 orcs began to run outwards in panic, but what awaited them were cold blades and spears. Seeing the orc army's camp already in chaos, Qin Tian ordered the horn of attack to be sounded. The great Qin elite soldiers standing at the front advanced step by step, holding their shields. Many orcs were instantly shocked when they saw the approaching shield soldiers. However, they also knew that they could not retreat at this time, because retreating would only lead to being trampled to death, so the orc soldiers' charge became even fiercer. Watching the massive minotaurs charge forward desperately, Qin Tian couldn't help but swallow. Just as the minotaurs were about to crash into the shield soldiers instantly made way, allowing the minotaurs to charge into the formation through the gap, and then close the shields again. However, the minotaurs who charged into the formation were all cut down by long sabers and then dragged to the rear. After dealing with the minotaurs inside, the shield soldiers at the front opened the gap again to let new minotaurs enter. This operation was repeatedly carried out along the several kilometer-long battle line, like orderly production lines. The orcs who were fortunate enough to escape the infantry's encirclement ultimately could not escape the Ziliang cavalry's encirclement. Qin Tian looked at the trembling hands of the Yan Yun 18 riders and smiled. "If you want to go, then go. You don't need to guard me here. Thank you, Your Highness." After speaking, the Yan Yun 18 riders formed a formation and charged into the enemy lines without even activating a battle formation. With the addition of the Yan Yun 18 riders, the already chaotic formation became even more chaotic. The Yan Yun 18 riders, like an awl, tore a huge gap in the enemy's position. The slaughter continued until dawn before stopping. Looking at the ground covered with corpses, Qin Tian felt no ripple in his heart at this moment. As soon as the killing stopped, Zhang Han led 200 shadow guards to Qin Tian and said, "Your Highness, Naza's head has been brought." Qin Tian nodded upon hearing this. Immediately after, Qin Tian noticed that the shadow guards behind Zhang Han were basically holding several heads in their hands. Seeing this, Qin Tian finally understood why the orc army was so chaotic last night. It turned out that all the commanders had already been beheaded by the shadow guards. "You've worked hard. Go rest for a bit. You've been killing all night. Thank you for your highness's concern." The Ziliang army troops not far away looked at the shadow guards holding the heads of the enemy leaders with eyes full of fear. They looked at the shadow guards as if they had seen ghosts. After all, several hundred people suddenly appearing in an open space in broad daylight, each carrying a head in their hand, would scare anyone. About an hour later, Bai Qi arrived before Qin Tian with the casualty report. "Greetings, Your Highness. All right. No need for formalities. Tell me, how were our losses this time?" "Reporting to Your Highness. This time, our army's total number of fatalities is over 11,800, among which the Ziliang cavalry suffered over 6,500 fatalities, the infantry suffered over 1,300 fatalities, the garrison suffered 4,000 fatalities, and the Great Qin elite soldiers suffered 0 casualties. In this battle, we annihilated over 316,800 enemy troops. There were no surrendering soldiers." Qin Tian nodded upon hearing this. After all, if the Great Qin elite soldiers still suffered casualties when facing the orcs, who mostly only possessed brute strength, they might as well buy a piece of tofu and just hit their heads on it to die. Furthermore, the experts in their army were all called out one by the shadow guards. Give the fallen brothers a proper burial, and issue triple the compensation. Also, don't always kill prisoners next time. You need to change this habit. Killing those without cultivation is useless. Our West Liang still needs manpower for construction, so pay attention next time." Bai Qi was stunned for a moment upon hearing this, then laughed and said, "Your Highness, I just got carried away with the killing. I'll pay attention next time." Qin Tian glanced at Zhang Han, who was holding heads, and the Yan Yun 18 riders behind him, who were wiping their curved sabers. He patted his aching head and said, "What kind of people have I recruited? Not a single one is normal." Chapter 8 The Orcs Transaction. Qin Tian looked at the lake of blood not far away and said, "Bai Qi, dig a pit and bury the bodies of those beastmen, leaving them here can easily breed disease." "Yes, Your Highness." Qin Tian watched Bai Qi's steps become noticeably lighter. Was it an illusion? Qin Tian shook his head. Wasn't it just burying people? What was there to be gauching about? No. It must be an illusion. Returning to Yumun Pass, Qin Tian had barely settled down before receiving a secret report from the Shadow Guard. The intelligence stated that the enemy's main force was still 200 kilometers away from Yumun Pass and could arrive in less than a day. Upon hearing this, Qin Tian laughed and said, "They're coming really fast. Pass down the order. All soldiers are to withdraw back to Yumun Pass. All 100,000 Ziliang cavalry are to withdraw to the foot of Mount Shao and await orders. Order the Ziliang Iron Cavalry. Golden Fire Cavalry. You must conceal yourselves well and wait for the opportune moment. Yumun Pass is built between 2 mountain ranges, and its city walls are 60 meters high, constructed entirely from profound fire stone, making the walls' sturdiness difficult for even the imperial city to match. Yumun Pass is 2 kilometers long and 1 kilometer wide, while the mountain pass between the 2 ranges is only 7 kilometers, so if the orc army wants to enter the pass, they must take Yumun Pass. Otherwise, what awaits them will be closing the gate to beat the dog. As long as the orc leader is not stupid, they will definitely choose to take Yumun Pass. Because the defending troops of Yumun Pass were able to completely annihilate a 300,000 strong orc army. Once they enter the pass, if the defending troops of Yumun Pass close the gate and beat the dog again, it is not impossible to annihilate this million-strong army by concentrating the strength of the entire nation. Therefore, Qin Tian estimated that the orc army would definitely choose to attack Yumun Pass. And now, the defending troops of Yumun Pass already have nearly 240,000 men. For defending the city, the number of troops is basically sufficient. If cavalry were used to defend the city, it would be a waste, so Qin Tian sent the 100,000 cavalry to the foot of Mount Shao to await orders. It wasn't that Qin Tian hadn't considered clashing head-on with the orc army, but considering that these special troop types following the martial generals are non-renewable, one less means one less. Qin Tian cherished these soldiers very much. After all, where else could he find such loyal troops? What Qin Tian is thinking about now is how to preserve his army to the greatest extent possible. After all, a battle between a million-strong army is no joke. If the orcs had a logistical supply line, it would be great, but unfortunately, the orcs' supplies are all in the hands of the army's generals. You should know that the space size of a storage ring starts at 100,000 cubic meters. The storage ring in Qin Tian's hand was obtained when he confiscated the aristocratic families, and the space contained within it is a full 10 million cubic meters. 1000*1000*100, 10 million cubic meters is this big, those bad at math can see for themselves. Qin Tian thought hard for a long time but couldn't come up with a very good plan. Assassination was definitely not possible. The reason for last night's success was entirely due to the assistance of the peripheral army. Otherwise, if the Shadow Guard were sent to act directly, the success rate would be very low. You should know that the sense of danger in wild beasts is many times stronger than that of humans. Forget it, no need to think about it, let's take it one step at a time. If he was truly willing to pay the price, Qin Tian could still repel these beastmen, but Qin Tian was reluctant. After all, many ants can bite an elephant to death. As the sun gradually set, the orc army arrived outside Yumun Pass. Hu Liang looked at the soldiers standing guard on the city wall and knew that the previous 300,000-strong army was finished. Hu Liang looked at the blood lake in the distance and said, "Big brother. Our vanguard unit is finished." Hu Liqiang said, "I know, the defending troops on Yumun Pass are not to be trifled with, we cannot advance rashly. Right now, if we still want to enter the pass, the only way is to attack and take Yumun Pass. Otherwise, once we bypass Yumun Pass, we will definitely become turtles in a jar." Hu Liang laughed and said, "Then let's just attack and take Yumun Pass. Anyway, we just happened to buy the necessary siege equipment from the humans, and now is a good time to test them. Moreover, as long as we get Yumun Pass, then in the future, we can raid whenever we want. Then let's set up camp today and start the attack early tomorrow morning." Standing on the city wall, Qin Tian looked at the army stretching for dozens of kilometers and said, "Bai Qi, this battle will not be easy." Bai Qi laughed and said, "What can we do about it? They are many and we are few, and you cherish your subordinates. Then we only have one path, which is to defend Yumun Pass. When winter arrives, they will all die." Qin Tian was first stunned upon hearing this, then overjoyed. "That's right. My brain. Prepare the horses. I want to talk to the orcs about doing business." Bai Qi was first stunned upon hearing this, then said, "What business are you talking about? Your Highness, don't mess around." Not long after, Qin Tian led the Yan Yun 18 riders, Bai Qi, Zhang Han, and 3,000 cavalry transferred from the foot of Mount Shao directly to the front of the orc army's camp. Report. Reporting to the Great General and Second General. Your Highness, King Qi from Yumun Pass, has brought his subordinates outside the main gate and says he wants to discuss a business deal with you. Hu Liqiang and Hu Liang immediately sat up upon hearing this and said, "What did you say? Big brother, is there some conspiracy here?" Hu Liqiang glared at Hu Liang upon hearing this and said, "What are you panicking about? How many people did he bring?" "About 3,000 people." Hu Liqiang and Hu Liang exchanged glances, and Hu Liqiang said, "Invite them in. I want to see what tricks they want to play." Soon, Qin Tian and his group were led into the camp of the Hu Liqiang brothers. Qin Tian looked around and estimated that the dozen or so beastmen nearby were all at the middle to late stage of the Grandmaster realm. Then Qin Tian shifted his gaze to the two beastmen sitting in the main seats and laughed. "This humble king, Qin Tian, greets the two generals." Hu Liqiang's pupils slightly contracted as he looked at Zhang Han and others behind Qin Tian. His intuition told him that this group of people was not simple. So Hu Liqiang said with a smile, "Sit down. Let's get straight to the point. What do you want to discuss? Qin Tian took a sip of tea and laughed. I think the reason you orcs go south to plunder is because you experience food shortages every winter, right? Hu Liqiang laughed and said, so what? Do you want to mock us? When it comes to survival, morality and compassion have long been abandoned by us. Qin Tian nodded and said, indeed. Therefore, I want to make a deal with you. I can provide you with large quantities of grain and cloth, and I can also allow you to trade with our merchants inside the pass. This is beneficial to both sides. Then what do you want? Minerals, gold, silver, labor. When he mentioned labor, Qin Tian noticed that Hu Liang and Hu Liqiang's expressions were a bit off, so he quickly said, of course, what I mean by labor is not to enslave you, I will pay wages. West Liang has been ravaged by you for years and is in ruins. Now that I am here, I want to end this meaningless war. Hu Liqiang laughed upon hearing this and said, don't you know that the three great empires of the human clan have strictly forbidden trade between humans and beastmen? Moreover, humans despise beastmen very much, don't you know this? Qin Tian was stunned upon hearing this, he really didn't know about this. Isn't this a disguised technological blockade? The three great empires are the Western countries led by the United States, and the beastmen are China. As for the matter of disgust, Qin Tian just smiled. As a modern person, he would not feel disgust towards any race, except for the little sun country. What you're talking about are the three great empires, what does that have to do with me, Qin Tian? Besides, West Liang is my territory, and only I have the final say. Speaking of disgust, do you know? People are even more disgusted by war. Hu Liqiang burst into laughter upon hearing this. Ha ha ha. You are a truly interesting human. But how can you expect me to believe you? Upon hearing this, Qin Tian walked straight outside, then waved his hand. Qin Tian directly bought rice worth 100,000 taels of silver from the system mall and placed it on the open ground in the military camp. Qin Tian looked at the 10,000 tons of rice before him, clapped his hands, walked into Hu Liqiang's military tent, and said, do you see? The 20 million caddies of rice outside are considered my Section A cent C unknown currency 1/4 meeting gift to you. Chapter 9. Reaching an agreement. Hu Liang and Hu Liqiang were both stunned by Qin Tian's generosity. Hu Liang stammered, Brother, this is too much. We couldn't even plunder this much. With this batch of grain, many of our tribesmen will survive this winter. Hu Liqiang took a deep breath and said, all right. Qin Tian, is it? Aren't you afraid I'll keep you here? Qin Tian smiled slightly upon hearing this and said, I'm not afraid of that. Your scouts should be back soon, right? As soon as Qin Tian finished speaking, the orc scouts ran back and reporting, General. 10,000 iron cavalry have been found 20 miles east and west of the camp. And every single one of them is at least a martial artist of the Hautian realm. Hu Liang and the others immediately stood up upon hearing this and said, what? Say that again. Qin Tian laughed and said, no need to be nervous. Those are my men. I still have 300,000 troops inside Yumun Pass. I'm not bragging, but if I didn't want to do business with you, your blood would probably be flowing into the blood lake below by now. So, do you still have the confidence to keep me here? After Qin Tian finished speaking, Bai Qi and the others released their aura. Feeling the aura coming from the opposite side, Hu Liqiang's pupils constricted. Based on the aura, if they were to fight, their side truly wouldn't be able to keep the other party, and they would likely suffer heavy losses. Hu Liqiang took a deep breath and said, all right. Your Highness, King Qi. You win. How do we trade then? Seeing Hu Liqiang relent, Qin Tian smiled and said, of course, it's bartering. Money is worthless to you, but not to me. So if you have anything good, you can trade it with me. If it's truly a treasure, I'm willing to trade spiritual stone with you for it. I will send someone specifically to negotiate the specific exchange rate with you afterwards. Now, you can take the goods back first. From now on, the gate of West Liang will be open to you. Of course, you will have to pay customs duty when passing through. Specific measures will be negotiated with you by someone after I have drafted the official document. Before the specific feasible plan is finalized, you beastmen can first exchange goods at Yumun Pass. This is the list of items we can exchange, please take a look. After receiving the list, Hu Liqiang began to examine it. Qin Tian, who had initially thought Hu Liqiang wouldn't be literate, breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing this and said, "Well, since we've finished discussing the matter, I should go. Otherwise, my subordinates will get worried. Farewell." After saying that, Qin Tian left. Hu Liang looked at Qin Tian's retreating figure and said, "Big brother, your highness, King Qi is truly someone who hides his strength." Hu Liqiang laughed and said, "Hee hee. An interesting human. I always feel that he is different from all the humans I have seen before. In the past, when those humans saw us, their eyes were filled with disgust. But he is different, his eyes are very clean. I even saw respect in his eyes. I feel I see a different future in this human. Pass down the order. The entire army is retreating." Upon returning to Yumen Pass, Qin Tian began to formulate relevant systems. He had to prepare for the future. He had a premonition that West Liang would become a huge trade center. Now he needed to establish a foundation, and gradually improve it later. After half a month of diligent writing, Qin Tian finally constructed a complete framework. When Qin Tian handed his written ideas to Fang Xuanling immediately exclaimed that Qin Tian was a rare genius seen only once in 10,000 years. Qin Tian felt quite embarrassed listening to this. After all, he had only copied the basic framework from his previous life. Another month later, the representatives of the Orc, leading the caravan they had assembled, arrived at Yumen Pass. Qin Tian planned to personally meet with them. After all, Qin Tian was short on staff now, and Fang Xuanling was not familiar with this area of business, so Qin Tian had to handle it himself. After Qin Tian had prepared the banquet, the voice of the attendant came from outside the door. Orc envoy arrives. As the Orc envoy walked into the room, Qin Tian's eyes immediately lit up, especially the fox-eared girl leading the group, which made Qin Tian's eyes shine. Before this, Qin Tian had thought that the Orc were all extremely terrifying beings. He didn't expect the female beastmen to be so beautiful and enchanting. Looking at the proud peaks and fair skin of the centaur race, and their charming faces, Qin Tian couldn't help but exclaim, "Anime didn't lie to me after all." Huli tribes Humei. Greetings, Your Highness, King Qi. Qin Tian had scrolled through Duin in his previous life, so he quickly reacted and said, "Please sit. These are the relevant rules we have formulated, please review them." After carefully studying the official document, Humei put it down. Qin Tian looked at Humei and smiled, "How is it? Does Envoy Humei have any opinions?" Humei shook her head and said, "None." Qin Tian didn't expect the Orc representative to be so straightforward, so he smiled and said, "Then we will implement the relevant plan according to what is written here." But who knew that the next second, Humei would shake her head and say, "Not yet." Why? Looking at the puzzled Qin Tian, Humei said, "Because my old dad has ordered that this contract can only take effect after I marry you." Qin Tian's eyes almost fell out when he heard this. To be honest, this Humei was definitely much more beautiful than his cheap old dad's women. Moreover, Qin Tian wasn't a proper person anyway. In any case, beastmen and humans wouldn't have offspring. Otherwise, Qin Tian would really have to consider it. So he casually replied, "That's no problem. Marriage alliances between countries are a very normal thing. If Qin Tian wanted to develop, he had to solve the Orc problem. Otherwise, Qin Tian shouldn't even think about it." Soon, the first trade between the humans and beastmen on the Tianshuan continent began within Yumen Pass. Watching various types of ores being traded before his eyes, Qin Tian was very excited. Because the Orc did not have noble professions such as alchemists and artifact refiners, and because humans and monster race were very disgusted with the Orc, a complete blockade was imposed on the Orc. However, the territory occupied by the Orc was rich in all sorts of iron ores, and for the beastmen who couldn't refine artifacts, they could only be exploited by the three great empires and the monster race. Furthermore, there were very few spiritual stone veins in the beastmen's territory, so many precious ores were sold for dirt cheap. After a month of intense knowledge absorption, Qin Tian finally understood why the three great empires did not allow anyone to trade with the Orc. They were afraid someone would touch their cake. It seems that trading with the Orc still needs to be kept secret. Otherwise, if a certain empire found out, they could just send someone to eliminate him. No. This matter must be kept secret. Qin Tian, who had known about this matter long ago, had already transferred the city guards. Only 10,000 great Qin elite soldiers remained here. Moreover, Qin Tian planned to make this a secret trading spot with the orc. Qin Tian's main task now was to first develop steadily, secretly grow, and then shock everyone. After all, the minerals Qin Tian was currently collecting could be exchanged for spiritual stone. Although the value of the minerals collected now was not high, he collected them in large quantities. Chapter 10 Complete all side quests. After Qin Tian reached an agreement with the orc, he immediately ordered someone to send Hu Mei back to his newly built king's residence, while Qin Tian personally went to preside over the trade fair. Qin Tian used 1 catty of grain to exchange for 1 catty of ore. Qin Tian was learning the trade method used by the Japanese in his previous life in the 80s and 90s with China, exchanging grain for resources, each taking what they needed. Those weighing iron ore. To the right. After weighing, please take the ticket in your hand and go to the left to collect your grain. Or whatever supplies you need. Everyone line up. Don't rush. We have plenty of grain. Everyone, don't be anxious. Qin Tian sat on the high platform, watching the great Qin elite soldiers busily maintaining order on the huge training ground. After a month of training, Qin Tian finally promoted Arabic numerals throughout the army. Furthermore, the soldiers under Qin Tian had all undergone training in addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. There was also an assessment at the end of the month, and those who failed would receive military punishment. Coupled with the fact that they were all martial artists, they learned exceptionally quickly. Looking at the long line of queues below, Qin Tian could already imagine how busy Yumen Pass would be in the future, and how much profit he would gain. Now, Qin Tian was planning to build Yumen Pass into a trade hub between West Liang and the Beastmen. At that time, many Beastmen might relocate to the vicinity of Yumen Pass, forming a large city. After all, the Beastmen could obtain supplies from Qin Tian to strengthen themselves, and other tribes that had not traded with Qin Tian would see the neighboring tribes growing stronger day by day. Then they would certainly try every means to inquire about Qin Tian's news and then come to him to trade. The trade continued for 3 days. Qin Tian looked at the mountain of ore piled up on the training ground and couldn't help but laugh. One must know that Qin Tian exchanged a total of 300 million taels of silver worth of grain and cotton this time. As for weapons, Qin Tian also bought quite a lot. A dark steel great saber sold for 300 taels of silver in the system mall, but Qin Tian directly offered 3 tons of dark steel ore for 1. Even at this price, a total of 300,000 dark steel great sabers were exchanged. After all, the orc, who lacked artificers and alchemists, had a great demand for high-quality weapons. One must know that although the dark steel great saber was a common item for humans, it was a priceless treasure for the orc. After the trade fair ended, Qin Tian looked at the ore filling the entire training ground and couldn't stop smiling. After keeping the useful iron ore, Qin Tian used the rest to exchange for spiritual stones. Ding! Exchange interface successfully opened. Scanning now. Ding! Scan successful. Ding! Host, are you sure you want to exchange them all? Qin Tian clicked confirm without thinking. Please select the currency required for exchange. Exchange spiritual stones into low-grade spirit stones. Exchange successful. Calculating now, please wait, host. Immediately after, the mountain of iron ore piled up before Qin Tian's eyes disappeared. After this wave of operations, Qin Tian earned a full 3,560,000 low-grade spirit stones and 40 million taels of gold. If exchanged at a ratio of 1 to 10, that would be 35,000 mid-grade spirit stones, and 3,500 high-grade spirit stones. Moreover, this was the net profit after deducting the system's transaction fees. Qin Tian finally understood why the 3 great empires strictly prohibited the dynasties and kingdoms under them from trading with the beastmen. If it were him, he would do the same. There was no other way, it was simply too profitable. The arrival of this batch of spiritual stones greatly relieved Qin Tian's pressure. After all, 1 low-grade spirit stone could allow an innate realm martial artist to cultivate for a month. Furthermore, if innate realm martial artists cultivated without the boost from spiritual stones, their cultivation speed would be very slow. And any centurion from the 3 elite units under Qin Tian was an innate martial artist. On average, each elite unit had 1,110 innate martial artists. Coupled with the nearly 108 martial artists from the original Ziliang army and garrison forces, the monthly salary for these people had to be calculated at 3 spiritual stones per month, and the higher the rank, the higher the monthly salary. La 1/4 Bu and Bai Qi were also major consumers of spiritual stones. Others used 1 per day, while they used more than 10 per day, and it was still not enough. Now that Qin Tian's wallet was full, he directly gave the officers of the 3 elite units double their salary. One must know that the army summoned by Qin Tian were also living people. They also needed to eat, drink, and excrete, and had emotions and desires. Although they would not rebel against Qin Tian was not a stingy person, and he would not mistreat his subordinates. Ding! Congratulations, host, for completing the side mission. Ding! Mission rewards are being issued. Please pay attention to receiving them, host. Qin Tian's eyes lit up, and he quickly opened his inventory. Ding! Congratulations, host, for obtaining a special character summoning card. Ding! Congratulations, host, for obtaining a special character summoning card. Ding! Congratulations, host, for obtaining a peerless martial general summoning card. Ding! Congratulations, host, for obtaining a first-rate martial general summoning card. Ding! Congratulations, host, for completing all side missions. Your luck has increased. The spiritual energy concentration within West Liang has doubled again. The next second, Qin Tian immediately sensed that the surrounding spiritual energy concentration had soared significantly. Even the imperial capital of the great Tang Dynasty couldn't compare to West Liang. Now, innate realm martial artists in West Liang, even without using spiritual stones, could cultivate at a speed comparable to martial artists cultivating with spiritual stones outside. Use all summoning cards. Ding! Summoning cards used successfully. Ding! Congratulations, host, for obtaining the special character Shen Wansen. Ding! Congratulations, host, for obtaining the special character Cao Zhengchun. Ding! Congratulations, host, for obtaining the peerless martial general Dian Wei. Ding! Congratulations, host, for obtaining the first-rate martial general Gao Shun. Qin Tian was overjoyed looking at this great gift package and quickly opened the attribute panels of the several individuals. Name: Shen Wansen. Cultivation: Late Grand Master Realm. Cultivation Method: Wealth Gathering Heart Sutra, Heaven Rank Low Grade Cultivation Method. Can be upgraded. Physique: None. Talent: Wealth Gathering. Passive Skill: Automatically increases profit by 30% when doing business. Appraisal: Passive Skill: Can identify the origin of any treasure that passes before one's eyes. Troop Type: None. Qin Tian looked at Shen Wansen's attributes, which could be considered decent. Immediately after, Qin Tian looked at the attribute panels of the others. Name: Cao Zhengchun. Cultivation: Early Po Shu Realm. Cultivation Method: Heavenly Gang Boy Skill, Heaven Rank Low Grade Cultivation Method. Can be upgraded. Physique: Yang Extreme Divine Body. Talent: Heavenly Cripple. Active Skill: When activated, one can pay a price to intercept the power of heaven and earth to assist in battle. Troop Type: 10,000 Brocade Guard, Haotian Peak. Qin Tian was so shocked by Cao Zhengchun's talent that his scalp tingled. After all, the power of heaven and earth was no joke. Once used, it could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. Name: Dian Wei. Cultivation: Early Po Shu Realm. Cultivation Method: Blood Demon Art, Heaven Rank Low Grade Cultivation Method. Can be upgraded. Physique: Blood Demon Battle Body. Talent: Battle. Passive Skill: During combat, strength will increase as the duration of the battle increases, until death in battle. Troop Type: 800 Tiger Brave Army, Haotian Peak. Name: Gao Shun. Cultivation: Grand Master Peak. Cultivation Method: Trapped Array Art, Heaven Rank Low Grade Cultivation Method. Can be upgraded. Physique: Trapped Array Body. Troop Type: 800 Trapped Camp. Talent: Trapped Array. Passive Skill: When surrounded, battle power directly surges by 2 times. When cooperating with the trapped camp, the battle power of all officers and soldiers can be directly increased by 3 times. Looking at the attribute panels of Dian Wei and Gao Shun, Qin Tian suddenly felt like he was floating. After all, having so many awesome martial generals under him. Anyone would feel like floating. Immediately after, Qin Tian discovered a problem, which was that the martial generals under him seemed to have all cultivated heaven rank cultivation methods. Qin Tian immediately opened the attribute panels of Bai Qi and the others, and indeed, he was right. Now their cultivation methods had all been upgraded to heaven rank. Now Qin Tian understood. So, the upgrade of cultivation methods was linked to luck. Immediately after, Qin Tian looked at his own cultivation method, which had also been upgraded to heaven rank, and was overjoyed. After all, no one would dislike their own strength being powerful, right? Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 11. System Upgrade. Soon, all the characters rewarded by the system arrived before Qin Tian. Greetings, Your Highness, King Qi. All of you, rise. Alright, now I will make a long story short. I will assign tasks to you. Cao Zhengchun. This humble servant is here. Your Majesty appoints you as the chief eunuch of the prince's estate. Rebuild the brocade guard to monitor the world. Coordinate with the shadow guard to form two networks, one open and one hidden. Within West Liang, I grant you the authority to execute first and report later. You will hand over with Zhang Han later. This humble servant thanks Your Highness, King Qi. Gao Shun. Your general is here. Your Majesty appoints you as the valiant general. Immediately lead the trapped camp to serve under Bai Qi without delay. Your general thanks Your Highness, King Qi. Looking at Dian Wei, who is holding double halberds and wearing black iron armor, Qin Tian said, Dian Wei. Your general is here. Your Majesty appoints you as the Tiger Brave General. Lead the Tiger Brave Army to form Your Majesty's Imperial Guards and protect Your Majesty. Your general thanks Your Highness, King Qi. Finally, Qin Tian looked at Shen Wanson and smiled. Wanson, I appoint you as the chief scribe of West Liang, in charge of all the money, grain, and foreign trade of West Liang. Your subordinate thanks Your Highness, King Qi. Qin Tian looked at the few people and said, all right, the tasks have been assigned. Tonight, I will host a banquet to welcome everyone. Ding. System rewards have been distributed. System mall is upgrading. After staying at Yumun Pass for 3 days, Qin Tian returned to Xiliang City. Looking at Xiliang City through the window, Qin Tian felt a strange sense of accomplishment as it became vibrant under his governance. The original bumpy dirt roads were all leveled and paved with bluestone slabs. The phenomenon of relieving oneself anywhere also disappeared. After these few months, the number of refugees recruited by West Liang reached 600 million, and production in various parts of West Liang has been restored. Upon returning to the prince's estate, Qin Tian found that there were many young and beautiful maids in his estate. Each of them would have been considered a campus beauty in his previous life. Now, they all appeared in Qin Tian's mansion in a swarm, which made Qin Tian a little overwhelmed for a while. However, no matter how you look at it, this was a beautiful thing, even more beautiful than drinking chicken soup, so Qin Tian was very happy to accept it. In this era where women were not considered people but resources, women were just appendages of power. After dinner, Qin Tian took a bath with the service of the maids and then returned to his room to rest. After all, he had been running around for so long and was quite exhausted. When Qin Tian returned to his room, he saw 2 delicate maids lying on the bed, and 4 women with even higher appearances than the maids outside standing by the bed. Qin Tian didn't react for a moment. Looking at the few women who were scantily clad, Qin Tian almost had a nosebleed that would flow 3,000 li. However, Qin Tian still suppressed the urge in his heart and said, why are you here? Replying to Your Highness, King Qi, Chief Eunuch Cao arranged it. We were originally young ladies from the aristocratic families of West Liang. After our families were destroyed, we were arranged to serve you. Qin Tian knew that as long as he was willing, he could immediately have intimate relations with these few women. This was a great temptation for Qin Tian, who was a virgin in both lives. However, Qin Tian suppressed the pain in his heart and said, you all hurry and put on your clothes and go out. But who knew that as soon as Qin Tian finished speaking, the few maids immediately knelt before Qin Tian and cried, Your Highness, King Qi, spare our lives. Qin Tian was confused by these few maids and said, I'm not going to kill you. What are you trying to do? Looking at the few scantily clad maids, Qin Tian didn't know whether to help them up or not. After all, Qin Tian wasn't sure if he could resist the temptation. Your Highness, if you don't want us, then we can only be sent to the private teaching workshop. If that's the case, we might as well die. Upon hearing this, Qin Tian immediately said, don't worry, I will have someone close that private teaching workshop, and you won't be sent there. Hurry and put on your clothes and go. The few women looked at each other and then knelt before Qin Tian. You, what are you doing? A maid looked at Qin Tian and smiled, Your Highness, we are your maids, you don't need to mind. After saying that, the few maids knelt directly before Qin Tian. Hu Mei's room was not far from Qin Tian's room, so she could naturally hear the sounds from Qin Tian's room. Listening to the screams coming from Qin Tian's room, Hu Mei couldn't help but blush. She scolded softly, this scoundrel. He's causing trouble as soon as he's back. Just like that, after opening the door to a new world, Qin Tian was immersed in it every day. Now he finally understood why ancient emperors liked to be foolish rulers. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed. During this time, Qin Tian took some time to make Hu Mei his concubine. Now, Qin Tian handed over the political affairs to Fang Xuanling, the military affairs to Bai Qi, and the trade with the beastmen to Shen Wansen. Qin Tian can now be said to be a carefree prince who waits for death. Every day, he either fishes and walks birds or rides horses and hunts, completely a profligate son. During this time, Fang Xuanling also came to find him and told him not to be too addicted to pleasure. But who knew that as soon as Qin Tian heard this, he immediately exploded and said, I've been fighting for so long, can't I enjoy myself? Moreover, I'm trusting you guys by handing over West Liang to you. Continue playing music and dancing. Fang Xuanling saw this, opened his mouth, then shook his head and left. In fact, West Liang is already on the right track. The remaining matters are just trivial things. He was just afraid that Qin Tian would be too addicted and delay important matters. The weather in early spring was very warm, and a gentle breeze blew. Qin Tian lazily stretched. Ding! System mall upgrade successful. Please check it yourself, host. Under the big tree, Qin Tian lay on a sun lounger with several fishing rods in front of him. He was only wearing a brocade robe, and the loose brocade robe revealed his well-built chest and abdominal muscles. Qin Tian, who was originally looking lazy, immediately sprang up after hearing the system's prompt sound and hurriedly opened the system's interface. The first few items that caught his eye were Talent Opening, 36-petal Golden Lotus, Chaos Pearl. They all had one characteristic: they were expensive. Qin Tian couldn't count the zeros after those numbers even with all his fingers and toes. Upon seeing this, Qin Tian said, System. List all the things I can afford. Ding. The system has automatically arranged the items you need for the host. Please check them carefully. After looking at the weapon panel, Qin Tian found that his remaining few million low-grade spirit stones didn't seem to be able to buy anything good. The cheapest Earth-rank low-grade weapon cost 8 million low-grade spirit stones. If he were to buy an Earth-rank weapon now, he would go bankrupt immediately. Yellow-grade low-grade weapons were cheap, only a few hundred low-grade spirit stones. Qin Tian's current elite army still used yellow-grade weapons. It is worth noting that in the Great Tang Dynasty, even a Shantian realm expert might not possess a yellow-grade weapon. Mysterious grade weapons were much more expensive, with the lowest costing tens of thousands, completely unaffordable. Chapter 12: Purchasing Elixirs. Qin Tian looked for a long time before deciding to check out the elixirs. Qin Tian opened the elixir interface, and after filtering out a large number of elixirs he couldn't afford, he selected 3 types he currently needed. They were the innate elixir, Po Zong elixir, and Po Shu elixir, and finally, there was a medicinal liquid called body tempering liquid. As the names suggest, these were elixirs used to break through to the innate realm, martial Zong realm, and Po Shu realm. The innate elixir only cost 60 low-grade spirit stones, so Qin Tian waved his hand and directly bought 30,000. The Po Zong elixir was priced at 20,000 low-grade spirit stones, and Qin Tian bought 180 at once. The Po Shu elixir wasn't very expensive, only 300,000 low-grade spirit stones, and Qin Tian directly bought 5. Since the Yan Yun 18 riders hadn't broken through to the peak of the Grandmaster realm, Qin Tian didn't buy any, otherwise, Qin Tian really couldn't afford them. The body tempering liquid is specifically used by martial artists in the body tempering realm. It can allow ordinary people to directly break through to third-rate martial artists. Even an elixir refinement pavilion apprentice can refine it, so the price is very cheap. A portion of body tempering liquid only costs 350 taels of silver, and Qin Tian plans to train all of the original Ziliang army into a regular force of third-rate martial artists, which is to be used as cannon fodder. After all, if a truly elite soldier dies, Qin Tian would feel heartbroken to the point of spitting blood. They are Qin Tian's confidence when facing the empires in the future and cannot be lost in such a place. Looking at the remaining 1,300,000 spiritual stones, Qin Tian was on the verge of tears. Looking at the cheap yellow-grade weapons and innate elixirs, Qin Tian waved his hand and bought 1,000 of each. Looking at the shrinking spiritual stones again, Qin Tian's heart twinged. Just as Qin Tian was about to close the system interface, Qin Tian accidentally saw the building materials category. Qin Tian clicked in with curiosity and found that they were all modern building materials, a large pile of rebar, cement, and so on. Qin Tian clicked on the properties of cement and was amazed. 1 spiritual stone per ton. Steel was also very cheap, 1 spiritual stone for a ton, and the buildings built could withstand the attacks of Grandmaster realm martial artists. You should know that the attack power of Grandmaster realm martial artists is not a joke. Splitting mountains and cracking stones is easy. Now these building materials can actually withstand the attacks of the Grandmaster realm. Qin Tian scrolled down and found that floor tiles and the like were very cheap, 1 tael of silver per square meter of floor tile, etc. Looking at the dazzling array of building materials, Qin Tian had a bold idea in his heart. Now West Liang's economy is developing very fast, so he wants to build a landmark building. At that time, this place will be built into a money pit. After all, rich people are not afraid of you ripping them off, they are just afraid that your style is not good enough. As long as the style is in place, won't the money flow into Qin Tian's pocket? When Qin Tian thought of this, his eyes lit up, and he quickly said, "Someone, go call Shen Wansen for me." Soon after, Shen Wansen was brought before Qin Tian. Shen Wansen looked at Qin Tian lying on the chair and said, "Wansen greets your highness." Qin Feng nodded and pointed to the chair beside him, saying, "Sit down. I have something to tell you." "Thank you, your highness." Wansen. "The orc market is almost saturated, right?" "Yes, your highness. Your subject has already reached agreements with the 3 nearest orc tribes. Now their food supply is basically satisfied, and your subject is thinking of expanding the market further through these 3 tribes. Very good. The low-end market needs to be expanded, and you can't miss the high-end market. Take this. Saying that, Qin Tian handed over the ring. Inside are 1,000 yellow-grade weapons and 1,000 innate elixirs. Later, you will take 50 shadow guards and 3,000 brocade guards to the orc tribes to hold an auction and strive to open up their high-end market. At that time, you can send people to secretly contact the leaders of the various tribes. How about this? Dian Wei is not very useful staying in Shi Liang City, so let him go with you. You also need someone to hold the fort. Also, remember to keep it a secret. After all, we are providing food and cloth to the beastmen. The 3 great empires won't pay too much attention if they find out. But elixirs and weapons are different. Once the people of the 3 great empires find out, they will definitely not let us go. You must remember this. Yes. Your subject will remember. Qin Tian nodded upon hearing this and said, "Then you should quickly get started on this matter. I will send the people to you later." Shen Wansen stood up and cupped his fists, saying, "Yes. Your Highness." Your subject takes his leave. Time returned to a month ago. In Kyoto, the 4th prince, who had received a secret report from his subordinate, was furious and said, "Trash. You bunch of trash. That Qin Tian has controlled West Liang for almost a year. Your intelligence has only just reached my hands. What am I keeping you for? You bunch of trash." General Wang Yuzhong looked at the enraged 4th prince and said in a deep voice, "Your Highness, please calm down. It seems that there is a large force supporting Qin Tian. All along, we thought Qin Tian was just a cowardly and incompetent piece of trash. But we didn't expect that this enfeoffment would give him the opportunity to develop his own strength. The force behind this Qin Tian is very mysterious, and we must be on guard, Your Highness." The fourth prince took a deep breath and said, General, what should we do now? Now Father Emperor's health is getting worse and worse, and he may not last much longer. The crown prince's power has been developing very quickly recently, subtly showing a trend of breaking the balance. Fourth prince, do not worry. Our biggest trump card at the moment is the 300,000 imperial guards in Kyoto and the 800,000 Zhenan army of your maternal grandfather, the Zhenan king, in the south. As long as we have the army in hand, even if the 6 great families make a fuss, they won't be able to cause trouble. Moreover, our Wang family and Zhao family support you, you can rest assured on this point. The fourth prince's expression immediately relaxed upon hearing this, and he smiled, that's true. Originally, we still had the millions of troops in West Liang. This hateful Qin Tian. We need to find a way to regain control of West Liang. The general smiled upon hearing this and said, Your Highness. You can rest assured on this point, the crown prince will be more anxious than us. I believe the outcome will be seen during the morning court tomorrow. After sending off Shen Wanson, Qin Tian continued to lie on the sun lounger and fish. Not long after, a brocade guard wearing a flying fish uniform and an embroidery spring blade at his waist ran up to Qin Tian and cupped his fists, saying, Reporting to your highness. The celestial envoy from Kyoto has arrived at the prince's mansion with an imperial decree and is now waiting in the main hall. Looking at the brocade guard in front of him, Qin Tian smiled and said, Tell him to come here. I'm too lazy to get up now. Not long after, a group of eunuchs brought a group of people to Qin Tian's front. Looking at Qin Tian, who was casually dressed, sitting on a chair, fishing, and not even bothering to look at him, Song Yu was just about to say something when Cao Zhengqian's glare almost scared him out of his wits. As an innate expert, Song Yu immediately sensed this pressure, which was many times stronger than that of the Grandmaster realm, and was shocked. Even the aura of the top expert in the palace, Guo Zongguan, was like an ant compared to this person. This must be a Poshu realm expert. He didn't expect that the sixth prince, who had always been so timid and submissive, actually had such a powerful expert by his side. Then his previous timidity must have all been faked. Having figured this out, Song Yu immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Recalling that he didn't seem to have offended this lord before, Song Yu immediately let out a sigh of relief and stood aside, not daring to breathe heavily. Chapter 13. The Imperial Decree. The Dragon Tooth Rice is mature. After leaving Song Yu waiting for about half an hour, Qin Tian turned to look at her and asked, Who are you? What are you here for? Hearing Qin Tian speak, Song Yu replied as if waking from a dream, Your Highness, King Qi. Kyoto sent this humble servant to deliver an imperial decree. Looking at the obedient Song Yu, Qin Tian smiled and said, All right. Let me see it. Song Yu looked troubled, as Qin Tian's actions were tantamount to disobeying the imperial command, a crime punishable by death. Song Yu was momentarily caught in a dilemma. However, upon seeing Qin Tian frown, she still obediently handed the imperial decree to him. Qin Tian took the decree, glanced at its contents, and then threw it into the nearby bonfire. The content of the imperial decree was to summon Qin Tian back to Kyoto to report on his duties. Qin Tian knew with absolute certainty what awaited him if he returned. He needed time to develop now. He didn't have time to play house with those few princes, and even if he defied the decree, the old emperor wouldn't dare do anything to him because Qin Tian's army was strong and his horses were robust. He truly wasn't afraid of this. Seeing Qin Tian throw the imperial decree into the fire, Song Yu exclaimed in shock, Your Highness. You are. Qin Tian smiled at this and said, All right. You can go back. I don't need to teach you what to say and what not to say, do I? Looking at Qin Tian's fierce gaze, Song Yu immediately shrank her neck and said, This humble servant understands. Then this humble servant will take her leave. After speaking, Song Yu rushed out as if Prince Qi's mansion was a dragon's den or a tiger's lair, and staying for another second would severely threaten her life. Watching Song Yu's hurried retreat, Qin Tian shook his head with a smile. The day after sending off the eunuch who delivered the decree, his subordinates reported that the dragon tooth rice outside Xiliang city had matured. Upon hearing this news, Qin Tian's eyes lit up. He immediately gathered his subordinates and rushed to the spiritual field outside the city. Qin Tian, along with several hundred brocade guards, hurried to the spiritual field. Looking at the lush green dragon-tooth rice, Qin Tian was overjoyed. A military officer of the great Qin elite soldiers guarding the spiritual field saw Qin Tian's carriage and immediately ran forward, kneeling before Qin Tian and saying, "Your general, Han Dang." "Greetings, Your Highness." Qin Tian looked at this lieutenant in the late innate realm and said, "All right, hurry up, I want to see the dragon-tooth rice." Qin Tian could smell the unique fragrance of dragon-tooth rice from a distance. Qin Tian also noticed that perhaps because the spiritual energy near the spiritual field was richer than elsewhere, or for some other reason, the surrounding trees had grown extremely tall, with 100-meter tall trees visible everywhere. Although West Liang's spiritual energy had been boosted twice, it wasn't this abnormal. Qin Tian shook his head, discarding the thoughts in his mind, and then walked to the edge of the spiritual field. Looking at the 3,000 great Qin elite soldiers and the 1,000 or so brocade guards beside the spiritual field, who were nervously watching their surroundings, now was the critical period for harvesting the dragon-tooth rice. Cao Zhengchun immediately mobilized all available brocade guards and cleared all living creatures within a radius of over 10 li. In an unknown location, a shadow guard eliminated a spy from an unknown force and then disappeared from the spot. This scene occurred in every corner around Xiliang City. Zhang Han knew the importance of the dragon-tooth rice and the spiritual field. Once the imperial dynasty or other countries learned of this news, they would definitely try to seize it. Qin Tian took the jade scissors handed to him by his subordinate and went down into the field. Looking at the dragon-tooth rice, which was almost twice his height, Qin Tian took a deep breath and began harvesting the dragon-tooth rice. Dragon-tooth trees look very similar to orange trees, but their branches are thicker, and they have fewer leaves. Harvesting dragon-tooth rice mainly involves cutting off the rice ears from its branches. A single dragon-tooth rice tree can produce about 500 jin of dragon-tooth rice per year, and 1 mu of dragon-tooth rice trees contains 120 trees. Therefore, 10,000 mu of dragon-tooth rice is a staggering 600 million jin, which is 300,000 tons. If harvested 4 times a year, the annual output is 1,200,000 tons. And a Hautian martial artist can eat 2 jin of dragon-tooth rice a day. According to this standard, the nearly 300,000 Hautian martial artists under Qin Tian would consume 600,000 jin per day, and 219 million jin of dragon-tooth rice per year. Could it be that the remaining dragon-tooth rice would just sit in his hands like this? That night, after finishing the dragon-tooth rice harvest, Qin Tian lay in bed holding Humei, lost in thought. As for selling it, Qin Tian immediately dismissed that idea. One must know that on this continent, only a few holy lands and Grand Xia Empire can produce dragon-tooth rice. Besides that, there is no other place that can produce dragon-tooth rice. Furthermore, the people of the Grand Xia Empire can only just achieve dragon-tooth rice freedom, and the amount sold externally is very small. The amount of dragon-tooth rice circulating in the market each year is only a few 100 million tons. Although this number sounds like a lot, on the Tianquan continent, not to mention imperial dynasties, there are over 10,000 kingdoms and 363 imperial dynasties. The number of martial artists in so many countries is definitely not something that a mere few 100 million tons of dragon-tooth rice can satisfy. Therefore, the price of dragon-tooth rice on the market has reached a terrifying 6 mid-grade spiritual stone per kilogram. As for selling it to the system, Qin Tian directly rejected that idea. That 30% handling fee is almost like robbery. No. Robbery isn't even this fast. Thinking of the mountains of dragon-tooth rice, Qin Tian's head ached. After all, so much dragon-tooth rice couldn't just be stored in a warehouse, could it? Unless it was buried underground, people would be able to smell its fragrance from over 10 li away. Moreover, the shelf life of dragon-tooth rice is only 5 years. After 5 years, the spiritual energy it contains begins to dissipate, and it will turn into ordinary rice in just half a month. How about using it to feed horses? Thinking of this, Qin Tian was very moved. His 3 major elite units together have approximately 220,000 warhorses. A warhorse can eat at least 10 to 20 jin a day. Furthermore, Qin Tian could grind the dragon-tooth rice and add it to the daily meals of the Ziliang army. After all, with dragon-tooth rice, the strength of the 3 major elite units would definitely increase rapidly. At that time, as cannon fodder units, it wouldn't do if their strength was too low. At that time, Qin Tian would sell a small amount of dragon-tooth rice husks to the beastman tribes. After all, as beastmen, they have the same powerful digestive system as demonic beasts, so dragon-tooth rice husks are also a great supplement for them. Regarding dragon-tooth rice husks, the empire's control is not very strict. After all, for humans, it's not a good thing. This stuff can only be used to feed warhorses and the like. Therefore, dragon-tooth rice husks are currently available on the market, with a price of about 1 mid-grade spiritual stone per jin. However, the most important thing at the moment is to improve his own strength, otherwise, he might be robbed. After all, beastmen are not good people. Therefore, the dragon-tooth rice husks produced at this stage can only be used to feed the Ziliang cavalry. It just so happens that Bai Qi is forming new Ziliang cavalry, and these dragon-tooth rice husks will have a place to be used. After figuring out the destination of the dragon-tooth rice, Qin Tian could not contain his excitement. He picked up Hu Mei beside him and began to get mischievous. Chapter 14. The old emperor is critically ill. 4 years passed in a blink of an eye, and Xiliang City, just as Qin Tian had predicted, became a commercial hub, with various ancient and elegant buildings standing tall within Xiliang City. In these 4 years, the population of West Liang surged to 1.2 billion. It almost accounted for 1/10 of the great Tang Dynasty. Because the spiritual energy within West Liang was the most concentrated in the entire nation, many noble families and clans came to Xiliang City to settle down. Among 100 people walking within West Liang, 3 were Hautian martial artists, and innate realm martial artists were also often seen. Even street vendors were recognized martial artists. Regarding the sudden surge of spiritual energy in Xiliang City, major external forces also sent people to investigate, and even the major sects within Great Tang and surrounding countries sent spies to investigate, but after looking around, they found nothing and gave up. However, among these forces, there were also some who refused to give up and established secret strongholds within West Liang, but they were often eliminated by the Brocade Guard and Shadow Guard the very next day. As the main city of the entire West Liang, Xiliang City was naturally the most prosperous place in all of West Liang, attracting a large number of foreign forces and experts to station themselves there. Among them, the most famous Tian Zan auction house in the entire Tianshuan continent unprecedentedly established an auction house within Xiliang City. Even in those dynasties, Tian Zan auction house only set up a few branches. However, the biggest pleasure spot in Xiliang City should be the world's first pavilion, which Qin Tian built 3 years ago, because the world's first pavilion offers one-stop service for dining, drinking, entertainment, and accommodation, and the waitresses inside are beautiful young ladies wearing professional attire and black stockings. This move by Qin Tian almost blinded the bumpkins of the Tianshuan continent, and some second-generation heirs who couldn't control themselves and wanted to make a move were beaten like dogs by the Brocade Guard. Qin Tian said that if you could open their belts with money, he had nothing to say, but if you wanted to use force, he would definitely let those people know what it meant to be inhumane. After several years of development, the Brocade Guard has grown to over 100,000 people, with the lowest cultivation level being Hautian realm late-stage martial artists. If they couldn't reach this level, they couldn't even enter the door of the Brocade Guard. The 99-story world's first pavilion stands tall, and from the top, one can overlook the entire Xiliang City. Qin Tian spent a huge sum of money in the system mall to buy a defensive array, which can defend against the attacks of Di Yuan realm experts. Above Po Shu realm or Yuandan, Di Yuan, Tianyuan, Dongshu, and the mysterious martial god realm. This information was collected by Qin Tian over the years. Over the years, as Qin Tian's trade with the Beastman tribes grew larger and larger, the resources in Qin Tian's hands accumulated more and more. There were a total of 2,569 Grandmaster Realm experts under him, and Cao Zhengchun, Bai Qi, La 1/4 Bu, and others had just broken through to the Yuandan realm not long ago, and there were also over 70 Po Shu realm experts. The power in Qin Tian's hands now gave him the confidence to contend with dynasties. In these years, in order to make money better, Qin Tian spent a lot of effort to cultivate his subordinates, buying all kinds of precious elixirs as long as they were useful. Now the strength of the Ziliang army has also been greatly improved, and even the minimum strength requirement for the garrison army has reached the level of first-class martial artists. It can be said that the development of the entire West Liang has been very successful, and Qin Tian's reputation as the king of West Liang has also resounded throughout the great Tang Dynasty. Countless young ladies in their boudoirs hoped to climb into Qin Tian's bed, while the forces in Kyoto who had harmed Qin Tian's birth mother and sister lived in fear every day, afraid that Qin Tian would raise his butcher's knife against them after returning to Kyoto. A maid from the king's mansion ran up to Qin Tian, bowed slightly, and said, "Reporting to your majesty. The celestial envoy from the imperial city has arrived." In these years, the hundreds of maids in Qin Tian's mansion, under the accumulation of various elixirs, cultivation techniques, and martial skills provided by him, have all broken through to the innate realm. Qin Tian, who was teasing a bird, said without turning his head, "I know, bring him in." Qin Tian's changes in these 4 years were truly significant. Now he already possessed the aura that a person in a high position should have, and his cultivation had also reached the peak of the innate realm. Song Yu, led by a maid, came to Qin Tian's side, looked at Qin Tian's figure, which was even more imposing than 4 years ago. Her legs went weak, and she knelt before Qin Tian, saying, "This humble servant greets your highness, King Qi." Qin Tian looked at the baffled Song Yu and said, "If you have something to say it quickly." Song Yu remained kneeling and said, "Your Highness, King Qi. The emperor is critically ill. He doesn't have much time left, so the emperor has summoned all the imperial princes who have been in theft to immediately set off for Kyoto." Upon hearing this, Qin Tian stopped teasing the bird in his hand and said, "All right, I understand, you can go back now." Seeing Song Yu leave, Qin Tian sighed towards the sky and said, "You still couldn't hold on in the end." To be honest, Qin Tian still wanted that old emperor to last for a few more years. His current strength was not strong enough, and if he were to become emperor and those dynasties dared to reach out to him, Qin Tian would definitely chop off their dog paws. Qin Tian scattered the bird feed in his hand into the fish pond, turned around, looked at Cao Zhengchun, and said, "Chief Eunuch Cao. It's still too early." Upon hearing this, Cao Zhengchun bowed and said, "Your Highness, do not worry. This old servant will definitely do his best to protect your safety." Qin Tian sighed and said, "Order. Have Dian Wei and his tiger-brave army immediately set off to the king's mansion to rendezvous with me." Zhang Han led 300 shadow guard to provide covert assistance, mobilize 3,000 brocade guard, and La 1/4 BU will lead 100,000 Ziliang iron cavalry to travel to Kyoto with me. During this period, all defense matters of West Liang will be fully entrusted to Bai Qi, with Meng Tian assisting. All government affairs of West Liang will be handled by Fang Xuanling, with Shen Wanson assisting. Issue the order quickly, we will depart for the imperial capital early tomorrow morning. Yes. This humble servant takes his leave. After Cao Zhengchun withdrew, he passed the order to the brocade guard to transmit to the garrisons in various places, and Qin Tian's 3 major elite units were all stationed before Yumen Pass, training day and night. After all, a large number of beastman tribes have now migrated to a place 200 li in front of Yumen Pass, quickly building a huge city by relying on trade with Qin Tian, and many orc tribes have also migrated to places several hundred li in front of Yumen Pass, with the number of beastmen reaching over 30 billion. Therefore, the defensive pressure on Yumen Pass doubled, and since the news from Yumen Pass could not be leaked, Qin Tian expanded Yumen Pass in these 4 years, completely blocking that pass, and of course, the labor used was from the orc. Every beastman entering Yumen Pass had to pay a certain amount of money. Due to trading with Qin Tian, the use of precious metals like gold and silver also began to become popular within the orc, which also facilitated Qin Tian's trade with the orc to a certain extent. After all, Qin Tian was the fundamental basis for the beastmen using gold and silver. As long as Qin Tian did not break off relations with them for a day, gold and silver would remain valid. Qin Tian was also happy to see this. He had originally thought about issuing currency, but the beastmen were not stupid and directly refused, which shattered Qin Tian's idea of having a constant source of profit. Chapter 15. Kyoto Oran Tournament. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Early the next morning, Qin Tian gathered his troops and began their journey to Kyoto. Looking at the vast and mighty army before him, Qin Tian sat on his red horse and shouted, "Depart! The army of over 100,000 people marched grandly from outside Xiliang city towards Kyoto. Along the way, the common people working in the fields all stopped to watch this immense procession. Over the past 4 years, Qin Tian had invested a large amount of resources in warhorses. Now, all the warhorses of Qin Tian's elite cavalry had reached the level of first-order demon beasts, which was equivalent to the level of human-acquired martial artists. Even the 400,000 Ziliang cavalry assembled by Bai Qi had warhorses that could rival second-rate martial artists. As for the mounts of peerless martial generals, for example, L1/4 Bu's Mount Red Hare had reached the level of a third-order demon beast. Although its combat power was not comparable to a Grandmaster realm martial artist. In terms of speed, Red Hare's speed was definitely not inferior to a Poshu realm expert. And for first-order demon beast warhorses, traveling thousands of miles a day was just a trifle. They arrived at the entrance of Kyoto, Hanggu Pass, in less than 6 days. Fang Ming, the garrison commander of Hanggu Pass, looked at the large army flying the banner with the character, Qi, before him and couldn't help but ask his deputy in doubt, whose army is this feudal prince's? It looks like a battle-hardened elite army. Their discipline is strict, and they obey orders. The deputy thought for a moment and then said, could it be Qi Wang's? Upon hearing this, Fang Ming also recalled the king of West Liang who had only begun to rise in recent years. After all, the distance from Kyoto to West Liang was truly too far. Only the nobles in Kyoto truly knew the specific details. So, they only knew the name of this king of West Liang. However, he didn't take it too seriously. After all, he was just a feudal prince. This is Kyoto. If you're a dragon, you coil. If you're a tiger, you crouch. Fang Ming, the garrison commander of Hanggu Pass, was a general who had been ostracized. He originally supported the third prince, but now the third prince couldn't compete with the fourth prince and the crown prince, so he was assigned here to test Qin Tian's attitude. Because the order he received was to make things difficult for this Qi Wang, Fang Ming also knew that he had lost power and could only follow the arrangements from above. Looking at the closed pass, L1/4 Bu stepped forward and shouted, "I am the General Zhen Qi under Your Highness, King Qi. Your Highness, King Qi, is returning to Kyoto under imperial decree. Open the gates quickly." Fang Ming was immediately angered by L1/4 Bu's arrogant attitude and said, "What Your Highness, King Qi? I've never heard of him. Unless you hand over your travel permit or imperial decree for me to inspect, don't even think about passing through here." Upon hearing this, Qin Tian knew that the garrison commander had received orders from his superiors to deliberately make things difficult for him. However, Qin Tian was very disdainful of such low-level tactics, so he waved his hand towards L1/4 Bu. Seeing this, L1/4 Bu roared, "How dare you? How dare you speak disrespectfully to Your Highness, King Qi? You deserve death." As the words fell, L1/4 Bu swung the Fang Tian halberd in his hand, and a huge blood-red energy blast flew towards Hanggu Pass. Boom! Hanggu Pass, which even a Grandmaster couldn't damage, was directly split in two as if it were made of paper. After splitting Hanggu Pass, the energy blast continued unabated, carving a trench 10 miles long and 30 meters deep into the ground. It was the first time Qin Tian had seen L1/4 Bu make a move. The garrison commanders and soldiers on Hanggu Pass had been blown to smithereens by this strike. The surviving soldiers were terrified. "Reporting to Your Highness. The obstacle has been cleared." "Understood. Continue on." After speaking, Qin Tian led the army and continued towards Kyoto. Hanggu Pass was only about 200 miles from Kyoto, and it took them an hour and a half to travel. After all, there were many travelers on the road inside Hanggu Pass, and Qin Tian ordered them to proceed slowly so as not to disturb the common people. Just as the sun was about to set, Qin Tian finally arrived before the imperial city. Qin Tian ordered the army to set up camp 20 miles outside the imperial city. Qin Tian, along with the Tiger Brave Army and the Brocade Guard, rode their horses into Kyoto. Under the guidance of the Brocade Guard, Qin Tian arrived at the Prince Qi's mansion that had been prepared in advance. After making all the arrangements, Qin Tian, despite Cao Zhengqian's strong objections, went out for a stroll with 2 Brocade Guards at the peak of the Grandmaster realm. As for L1/4 Bu and the others, they remained in the Prince Qi's mansion. After L1/4 Bu's display of power during the day, he was certainly being closely watched by various forces. Before entering Kyoto, Cao Zhengchun had sensed several auras no weaker than his own, so he strongly opposed Qin Tian's rash behavior. Kyoto was very unfamiliar to Qin Tian, as he had been exiled to West Liang just a few days after transmigrating. Looking at the bustling crowd, who seemed to be going in one direction, he randomly stopped a passerby and asked. Only then did he learn that the Yulai House, known as the #1 building in Kyoto, was holding a courtesan competition. Qin Tian, having lived 2 lives, had never visited a brothel. After all, there were no brothels within West Liang. Qin Tian hated human trafficking the most, and most of the courtesans in brothels were trafficked, with only a small portion selling themselves voluntarily. Therefore, under the vigorous cleanup by the brocade guard, all the brothels within West Liang were cleared out. Those who should be killed were killed, and those who should do forced labor did forced labor. Driven by curiosity, Qin Tian followed the crowd to Yulai House. As a decent person, Qin Tian would never go whoring. It was impossible in this life. He was just curious. Looking at the 9-story Yulai House, Qin Tian opened his folding fan and fanned himself in front of his chest, looking exactly like a profligate young master. He lifted his foot and was about to walk in but was stopped by the attendant at the door. Qin Tian didn't want to waste words with the attendant and directly placed 3 gold ingots of 20 taels each into the attendant's hand, saying, "Take me to the best private room." Seeing the generous Qin Tian, the attendant immediately bowed and said, "Okay. This Gongzi, please come in." Originally, to enter Yulai House today, one had to complete a couplet, otherwise, they wouldn't be allowed in. However, Qin Tian gave too much, so much that even the attendant couldn't refuse. To put it bluntly, this courtesan competition was about selling the first night of these so-called courtesans. There were only 2 ways to sleep with a courtesan. The first was to impress her with your literary talent, and the second was to use money to break open her belt. As for the price, of course, it was whoever offered the highest. However, as a decent person, Qin Tian wasn't here to whore. Because teacher Luo said that whoring for free doesn't count as whoring. In this era where women were not counted as people but as resources, sometimes being beautiful was also a sin. Without the guarantee of absolute strength, beauty could sometimes be a death warrant. Qin Tian was led by the attendant to a private room on the 3rd floor. The 2 brocade guards were left outside the private room by Qin Tian. Qin Tian drank tea in the private room, looking down at the scholars in the hall who were drinking with women in their arms and priding themselves as gentlemen and talented individuals. He shook his head, but there was nothing he could do. After all, the expenses of these scholars were covered by the great Tang Dynasty. After all, who wouldn't be willing to whore for free? Soon, tonight's courtesan competition began. Zhang Suyu, known as the Flower Fairy, curiously looked at Qin Tian, who was sitting alone in the private room drinking by himself. After all, everyone who came to this place had only one purpose, and that was to play with women. However, ever since Qin Tian came in, he had been sitting alone in the private room drinking tea. This made Zhang Suyu, who had grown up in Yulai House since childhood, develop a strong curiosity towards Qin Tian. Chapter 16 The Spiritual Tree. Chapter 16 Spiritual Wood Divine Body. Just as Zhang Suyu was staring blankly at Qin Tian, Xiao Kui, who was beside her, nudged Zhang Suyu's shoulder and said, "Flower Fairy. The Flower Queen competition has started. What are you thinking about? So lost in thought. Could it be that you've found your ideal husband?" Zhang Suyu, who had come back to her senses, retorted with a charming rebuke, "Xiao Kui, what are you saying? I was just thinking about something, that's all. Take me to get ready. You clearly took a fancy to that Gongzi in the private room." Xiao Kui grumbled while being pulled by Zhang Suyu, glancing towards Qin Tian's private room. As flower petals drifted down from the sky, Zhang Suyu, with a veil covering her face, slowly descended from above. The guests below were instantly stunned by the scene before them. "Look, it's the Flower Fairy. Wow. So beautiful. ... Watching Zhang Suyu descend from the sky, the guests couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Even Qin Tian in the private room was greatly surprised by the woman before him. Qin Tian had a high resistance to beautiful women. What shocked him was not the beauty of this Flower Fairy, but the prompt from the system. Ding! Spiritual wood divine body detected. Ding. Side quest issued. Bring the spiritual wood divine body under your command. Ding. Please note, host. The spiritual wood divine body is the best dual cultivation cauldron under the heavens. Looking at his system interface, which suddenly had an additional attribute panel for the flower fairy, Qin Tian opened it without hesitation. Name. Jiangsu Yu. Cultivation method. None. Cultivation level. None. Physique. Spiritual wood divine body. Talent. Cultivation. Can accelerate the growth speed of spiritual plants. Increase yield. Specific increase depends on cultivation level. Troop type. None. Qin Tian looked at the flower fairy's attributes. Qin Tian suddenly stood up, looking at the dancing flower queen below with fiery eyes. Seeing Qin Tian staring intently at her, Jiangsu Yu's face immediately flushed red. Having grown up in a brothel, she had seen all kinds of men. But today, being stared at by Qin Tian made her heart pound like a frightened deer, and her steps almost couldn't keep up with the rhythm. After the song ended, Qin Tian looked at the disappearing flower fairy and couldn't help but mutter, hee hee. Interesting. He wanted this woman. No one could stop Qin Tian from saying so. Qin Tian thought that if he took Jiangsu Yu this woman under his wing, sending her to manage the spiritual fields would definitely yield unexpectedly good results. After Jiangsu Yu finished her dance, several other flower queens immediately came onto the stage. After learning about Jiangsu Yu's spiritual wood divine body, Qin Tian now only wanted to take her home and seemed uninterested in the subsequent flower queen performances. Little did he know that this scene was seen by Jiangsu Yu. After finishing her performance, Jiangsu Yu saw Qin Tian's uninterested expression and felt an indescribable happiness in her heart. Seeing Qin Tian lazily leaning to the side, drinking tea and surveying the flower queens below, he looked completely different from when she was performing just now. He couldn't be. Just as Jiangsu Yu was in a daze, Xiao Kui walked up to her side and said, "Flower fairy." "Oh my. Xiao Kui. You scared me to death." Jiangsu Yu looked at Xiao Kui's mischievous smile and immediately blushed. "Did you take a fancy to that Gongzi in the private room on the third floor?" "Don't even mention it. This Gongzi Wei is really handsome. No wonder you, flower fairy, would like him. Hee hee. Xiao Kui, what nonsense are you talking about? See how I deal with you." Immediately after, pleasant laughter like silver bells came from the lounge. Soon, the performances of the 8 flower queens came to an end, and the main event of the night was about to begin. A platform slowly descended from above the stage. The platform had 8 compartments, and the personal maid of each flower queen stood at the entrance of each compartment. Sitting inside the compartments were the 8 great flower queens of the night. This segment was called, Contending for the Flower Queen, which was essentially a literary contest. Those who wished to become the flower queen's favored guest only needed to compose a poem that satisfied the flower queen, and then they could step onto the rope bridge connected to the compartment and begin challenging 3 stages. In the first stage, those who stood on the suspension bridge had to accept challenges from all the flower queen challengers. Of course, the content of these challenges was still literary competition. Seeing this scene before him, Qin Tian couldn't help but complain, "Holy crap. This routine again. Even whoring has to be so fresh and refined." However, Qin Tian had no intention of breaking the rules and directly snatching someone. Instead, he planned to play along with them. "Are you kidding me? As a student of Chinese language and literature with the foundation of 5,000 years of Chinese history, would Qin Tian be afraid of this? If they were science and engineering students, Qin Tian wouldn't dare to show off like this, because you could ask science and engineering students to recite ancient poems, but if you asked them how to distinguish between the upper and lower couplets, they would definitely be stumped. You should know that among the large crowd present, aside from a few wealthy individuals, most were students from the Imperial Academy. If they were to genuinely engage in couplet matching later, it would be a huge embarrassment." Looking at the people who kept failing in front of the suspension bridge, he shook his head. These people were all composing doggerel, and not very good ones at that. However, after a while, someone actually succeeded. Other flower queens began to have people who could stand on the suspension bridge, and although there were a few people who did well on the flower fairy's side, none of them received the flower queen's favor. Seeing the crowd getting smaller and smaller, Xiao Kui started to get anxious and quickly said to Jiangsu Yu in the compartment, "What should we do?" Flower Fairy. That Gongzi hasn't come yet. If this continues, you'll miss the literary contest. The Flower Fairy in the compartment was also so anxious that she clenched her fists tightly, her palms already wet with sweat. She knew that after missing the literary contest, she would face the bidding process. The literary contest was actually an opportunity for the flower queens to choose for themselves. One should know that the auction segment was filled with pot-bellied rich men. And Qin Tian was so young. She thought that even if his family was rich, they couldn't compare to those wealthy men. Thinking of this, the Flower Fairy's heart couldn't help but sink. In the history of Yulai House, some lucky flower queens were redeemed by the wealthy men who favored them after the auction, paying 10 times the price. But such a chance was very small, as using public resources for private gain was very immoral. Seeing the crowd in front of the Flower Fairy's compartment getting smaller and smaller, Qin Tian put down the teacup in his hand and started to walk down. Seeing Qin Tian's figure walking over, Xiaoqui said to the compartment, "Flower Fairy. That Gongzi is coming over." The Flower Fairy in the compartment couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, letting go of her tightly clenched hands. Qin Tian walked to the front of the suspension bridge, put his left hand behind his back, held a fan in his right hand in front of his chest, and walked onto the bridge. As he walked, Qin Tian began to recite a poem. Her dress is like a cloud, her face like a flower, the spring breeze brushes the railing, the dew is thick. If not seen on the peak of Mount Cunyu, she would be met under the moon on the Jade Terrace. By the time Qin Tian finished reciting this poem, the entire audience fell into a silence where a dropped needle could be heard. Clang! A servant boy, unable to hold the plate steadily, dropped it onto the ground, pulling the stunned people back to reality. Oh my god! This Gongzi is truly talented. We are actually fortunate enough to witness the birth of such a masterpiece. How delightful! How delightful! The people who had come back to their senses all applauded and cheered. Even the flower queens beside them couldn't help but walk out of their compartments to get a glimpse of Qin Tian's true appearance. May I ask if this humble poem of mine is pleasing to your eyes, miss? Qin Tian looked at the stunned Xiaoqui and smiled. Xiaoqui, who had come back to her senses, quickly said, "Yes. Yes. Gongzi, you can come in directly." Saying this, Xiaoqui opened the door to the compartment. However, this scene immediately displeased Zhang Suyu's admirers, who began to cause trouble one after another. Seeing this, Qin Tian smiled and said, "All right everyone. Quiet down. Since I, Qin Tian, am standing here, I will accept your challenges. Let's not waste any more words. Tell me, what do you all want to compete in?" Chapter 17. The Three-Part Battle of the Oran. When Qin Tian spoke, the originally noisy crowd quieted down. After discussing it among themselves, they stepped forward and said, "How about this? Since there are many of us, how about we compete with couplets? After all, comparing zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting would take too much time. As for composing poetry, we admit defeat." Qin Tian looked at the crowd and smiled, "All right. There are too many of you. I will present 3 couplets. If you can match 2 of them, I lose. Otherwise, I win. How about that? All right. We'll follow your lead." Qin Tian put away his folding fan and said, "Listen carefully. The first couplet is, heaven is the chessboard, stars are the pieces, who dares to play? The second couplet is, smoke locks the pond willows. The third couplet is, the lotus on the painting, painted by the monk." Everyone present were scholars from the Hanlin Academy. Upon hearing these 3 couplets, they all gasped. These 3 upper couplets could all be called eternal absolute couplets. And anyone who could match these 3 couplets could definitely be called an unparalleled genius throughout history. The first couplet contains the characters for Tianzi, son of heaven, so the scholars were very cautious. Moreover, the upper couplet as a whole was grand and imposing, so the lower couplet also needed to maintain that momentum. The second couplet was even more groundbreaking, creating a 5-element couplet. One must know that the great scholar Chen Shusheng from Jiangdong had racked his brains for several years but failed to create a 5-element couplet. Unexpectedly, it was created today in this Yulai house. Since this 5-element couplet could make a great scholar ponder for several years without finding a way, the scholars admitted to themselves that they did not have this ability. As for the third couplet, it uses homophones. Even if a great scholar of the time came, they might not be able to match it. Therefore, everyone present gave up struggling. The students from the Imperial Academy all stepped forward to ask Qin Tian for guidance. A leading scholar walked up to Qin Tian, bowed slightly, and said, "Brother, our knowledge is limited, and we cannot match your couplets. May I ask if brother has prepared the lower couplets?" Qin Tian, who had originally disliked these scholars who spent their days drinking and whoring, saw that they were actually willing to learn humbly and said, "HMPH. You bunch of good-for-nothing wastrels who spend your days carousing and making no progress naturally can't match them. I'll give you a piece of advice. If you don't diligently study while your hair is black, you'll regret it when your head turns white." The scholars present were so ashamed upon hearing these words that they dared not lift their heads. After all, Qin Tian was right. After all, their knowledge was shallow, and they just knew how to spend their days in Yulai House, wasting the imperial family's money. The scholar who had originally stepped forward to ask bowed and said, "Thank you for your teaching, brother." Qin Tian heard this, turned around, and said, "No need to thank me. Don't you just want to know the lower couplets for my 3 couplets? I'll tell you now. Listen carefully. The first couplet is, Earth is the pipa, roads are the strings, who dares to play? The second couplet is, waves warm the brocade-dyked peaches. The third couplet is, calligraphy copied from Han Dynasty steles, written by Hanlin scholars. Qin Tian's 3 couplets came out, leaving the scholars completely convinced of their defeat. After Qin Tian finished speaking the lower couplets, he walked towards the private room. As he reached the door, Xiaoqui directly opened it and let Qin Tian enter. As soon as Qin Tian entered the private room, he smelled a delicate fragrance. Qin Tian looked at the person kneeling before him, walked forward, lifted his robe, and sat down in front of Zhang Suyu. Looking at the elegant and refined Zhang Suyu before him, Qin Tian opened his mouth and said, "This humble scholar Qin Tian greets the flower immortal." Zhang Suyu looked at Qin Tian's handsome face and couldn't help but blush, saying, "Young Master Qin, please be seated." Not long after Qin Tian entered the private room, the trials for the other courtesan queens also ended. After all, Qin Tian's poem and several couplets had already thoroughly defeated the others. Soon, the private room slowly ascended and disappeared from everyone's sight. The private room opened directly into the room of the courtesan queen, the flower immortal Zhang Suyu. Qin Tian looked at the room, which was decorated in a fresh and elegant style, smiled slightly, and sat down at the table. Zhang Suyu looked at Qin Tian sitting at the table, then removed the veil from her face. Qin Tian looked at Zhang Suyu and couldn't help but be mesmerized. Although Qin Tian was experienced, he had to admit at this moment that the flower immortal before him was comparable to Humei at home. Zhang Suyu looked at Qin Tian staring blankly at her, lowered her head, and said, "Young Master Qin, would you like to take a bath?" Qin Tian heard this, stepped forward, and embraced her. Zhang Suyu struggled a little, then stopped resisting. She also knew that meeting a young, talented, and handsome man like Qin Tian on her first night was the dream of countless girls in brothels, so she didn't feel much resistance at this moment. Qin Tian looked at the person in his arms, whose face was flushed, and said, "Washing alone isn't as fun as washing together, is it?" After saying that, Qin Tian picked her up amidst Zhang Suyu's gasp of surprise and walked towards the bath. Not long after, the 2 naked bodies were on the bed. Zhang Suyu looked at Qin Tian, who was breathing heavily, and whispered, "Please, please be gentle, Gongzi." Qin Tian heard this and no longer held back, transforming into a hungry wolf. Just as Qin Tian was enjoying his night of passion, the assassins from the 8 great clans of Kyoto all returned to their respective families. Reporting to the House Lord that Qin Tian has several Grandmaster realm experts guarding him. We were unable to act. Lu Zong looked at the deathsworn kneeling before him and snorted, "Understood. You may go down." This scene occurred almost simultaneously in the 8 great clans of Kyoto. Qin Tian had only brought 2 Grandmaster realm brocade guard with him tonight precisely because he wanted to see who in Kyoto wanted him dead. However, after meeting Zhang Suyu, who possessed the spiritual wood divine body, he abandoned that idea. The shadow guard hidden around Qin Tian were also very sensible. They deliberately leaked their aura, scaring away the incoming assassins. Otherwise, if Qin Tian's plan to pick up girls failed, Zhang Han wouldn't let them off. The next day, after Qin Tian woke up, he looked at Xiao Kui and Zhang Suyu, who were holding him tightly, and couldn't help but start making little movements. Xiao Kui and Zhang Suyu were woken up by Qin Tian's movements and wanted to get up. However, Qin Tian wouldn't let them go. He pulled the two back under him and started their morning exercise. The sounds from the Flower Immortal's room didn't stop until the sun was high. After Zhang Suyu and Xiao Kui helped Qin Tian get dressed, Qin Tian looked at Zhang Suyu, who seemed hesitant to speak, and understood what she meant. Qin Tian pinched Zhang Suyu's little face and said, "Little darling, how about coming home with me?" Zhang Suyu immediately looked up, staring at Qin Tian with a look of astonishment, and said, "Really? Really?" Then Xiao Kui, "She'll come too. You two performed well last night. You're annoying. Oh, right. I forgot to tell you, my identity is Qi Wang." Looking at Qin Tian, who was holding her, Zhang Suyu covered her mouth and said, "What? You are Qi Wang, that king of West Liang?" Looking at the incredulous Zhang Suyu, Qin Tian nodded and said, "Yes. I am the king of West Liang you spoke of. All right, let's go out quickly. It's getting late, and I'm hungry." After Qin Tian finished breakfast, he spent 100,000 taels of gold to redeem Zhang Suyu and Xiao Kui, then took them back to Prince Qi's mansion. Chapter 18. Dragon Phoenix Art. After returning to the Wang family residence, Qin Tian looked at the activated system interface. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the side quest. Rewards are being settled. Ding! Settlement successful. Please check. Without a word, Qin Tian immediately opened the gift package. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Dragon Phoenix Art. Ding! The Dragon Phoenix Art has been detected. Extract. Extract. Ding! Extraction successful. Transmission in progress. The next second, a vast amount of information poured into Qin Tian's mind. An hour later, Qin Tian finally finished receiving all the information. Qin Tian opened his attribute panel. Name: Qin Tian. Cultivation: Grandmaster Realm Late Stage. Cultivation methods: Yanhuang Ancestral Dragon Art, Dragon Phoenix Art. Physique: Not awakened. Talent: Not awakened. Dragon Phoenix Art absorbs the yin-yang energy of heaven and earth into oneself. One who achieves great mastery can comprehend the yin-yang great Tao. Qin Tian couldn't help but gasp when he looked at the Dragon Phoenix Art. One must know that among the 3,000 great Taos, the yin-yang great Tao is ranked among the top 3 existences, showing how powerful this cultivation method is. Qin Tian discovered that he was still at the peak Shantian stage last night, but after a passionate night with Zhang Suyu, he had actually reached the late Grandmaster stage. This was a leap across a major realm. The spiritual wood divine body truly lived up to its reputation. After transmitting the Dragon Phoenix Art to Zhang Suyu, Qin Tian took Zhang Han and Dian Wei to visit Xinjiang. After all, no matter what, he was the original body's convenient old dad, wasn't he? Qin Tian, leading a squad of brocade guard and accompanied by Dian Wei and Zhang Han, rode West Liang warhorses directly towards the imperial palace. Along the way, the brocade guard's handsome flying fish uniform attracted the attention of passers-by. The vendors nearby, watching dozens of cavalrymen brush past them, couldn't help but whisper, "Whose personal guards are these? They're truly imposing." Alas! These are His Highness, King Qi's personal guards. Look, the one in the east sent leading them is him. What? That useless Qi Wang. Shut up. Do you want to die? I heard from the porters that the brocade guard in His Highness, King Qi's hands are everywhere. If you keep spouting nonsense, be careful, the brocade guard might come to your door tonight to take your head. The vendor nearby couldn't help but shrink his neck upon hearing this. Qin Tian rode his horse to the Zanwu gate of the imperial palace and was stopped by the guards. A commandant ran up to Qin Tian and cupped his fists, saying, "Your General Han Yu greets Your Highness, King Qi." Looking at the Han Yu in front of him, Qin Tian smiled and said, "Commandant Han, why are you blocking my path? Could it be that you intend to make things difficult for me? Your general wouldn't dare. It's just that horses are not allowed inside the imperial palace. I hope Your Highness understands." "Oh, there's that rule. Then I'll dismount. You all wait for me outside. Dian Wei, Zhang Han, you two follow me in. Your general obeys Your Majesty." The brocade guard nearby also dismounted and waited on the side upon hearing this. Han Yu also cleared the way when he saw this. At the same time, the crown prince was in the imperial study reviewing memorials. A guard ran in. Reporting to His Highness, the crown prince. Qi Huang has entered the imperial palace through the Zanwu gate. His Highness, King Qi, is currently heading to Taihan Palace. All right, I understand. You may withdraw first. After dismissing the messenger guard, the crown prince turned to the national teacher Lu Zong and said, National teacher, Qi Huang has already entered the imperial palace, and he only brought 2 subordinates with him. If we don't act now, we will miss this opportunity. After all, that General Lu under Qi Huang who split open Hanggu Pass with one move that day is an existence above the Grandmaster realm. If we let him return to the military camp, we won't be able to do anything to him. Your Highness, the Crown Prince, do not panic. It is not convenient for us to act in this imperial palace. After all, if we act, those old fellows in the Zongren residence will be difficult to deal with. We can only act outside the city. Moreover, by then, as long as we wait for your majesty to abdicate to us, the Zongren office will naturally stand on our side. And with the help of those few from the Zongren residence, even if La 1/4 Bu is powerful, he is just in the Poshu realm. We will easily take him down. Furthermore, I have secretly written to the Zhenbei king, asking him to bring his troops south. By then, 600,000 elite Zhenbei army against a mere 100,000 Ziliang iron cavalry will be as easy as picking something up from a bag, won't it? Even if all 100,000 of his Ziliang iron cavalry are in the Hautian realm, what of it? By then, we will press forward with our 600,000 strong army. Plus, destroying those 100,000 Ziliang iron cavalry will be effortless, won't it? As for the 300,000 imperial guards in the 4th prince's hands, with the help of the Zongren residents, we can easily suppress them. As for the Zhenan king, there's even less to worry about. His army has been almost completely corrupted by our Eagle Whistle people. So, Your Highness, you just need to wait for your majesty to pass away. Upon hearing this, the crown prince's expression relaxed. He bowed slightly to Lu Zong and smiled, then I will leave everything to the national teacher's arrangements. Wang Yuzhong looked at the 4th prince, Qin Wudao, and said in a deep voice, Your Highness, the 4th prince. Qin Tian bringing troops to the capital this time is likely for no small gain. It seems he also wants to contend for that position, so we must make arrangements as soon as possible. Then, in your general's opinion, how should we handle this? I believe Your Highness, the 4th prince, should immediately write to your maternal grandfather, the Zhenan king, and ask him to quickly bring his troops north. It's time to remove the eagle whistle, this malignant tumor. The Wang family and Zhao family think they are clever and treat everyone else as fools. We deliberately kept the eagle whistle all these years to see them. Now the time is ripe. It's time to tell the Zhenan king to bring his troops north. The Zhenbei king has already set off. The 4th prince immediately said upon hearing this, all right. I will write to my maternal grandfather right away. The Zhenan king lost his wife early and only had consort Yin as his daughter, so he was particularly fond of his grandson, Qin Wudao. He basically agreed to whatever Qin Wudao asked. After arriving at Taihan Palace, Qin Tian pushed open the door and saw Qin Zheng lying on the bed, barely breathing. Seeing this, Qin Tian stepped forward. Qin Zheng might have heard the movement beside him and opened his eyes with difficulty. Looking at Qin Tian in front of him, Qin Zheng stammered, Guo Zongguan, you go out first. Don't let anyone in. Guo Zongguan looked at Qin Tian with a meaningful glance, then bowed and said, yes. This humble servant obeys your majesty. Seeing Guo Zongguan close the door properly, Qin Zheng looked at Qin Tian and said, help me up. Qin Tian looked at the weak Qin Zheng in front of him, feeling somewhat complicated. After all, no matter what, Qin Zheng was the blood relative of this body, so Qin Tian obediently helped Qin Zheng up. Do you hate me? Hey, why would I hate you? Qin Zheng burst into laughter upon hearing this, ha ha ha. I didn't expect that I, Qin Zheng, who was wise my entire life, would misjudge you. I originally thought you were a person with a weak character, but I didn't expect your disguise to be so good. You deceived your majesty. You deceived everyone. I didn't expect it. Your majesty still has a son like you who knows how to hide himself. Ha ha ha. How enjoyable. How enjoyable. Chapter 19. Qin Zheng passes away. After laughing for a while, Qin Zheng sighed and looked at Qin Tian, saying, Your Majesty knows who the murderers of your mother consort and imperial sister are. Qin Tian frowned upon hearing this. It's the Empress and consort Zhao, or rather, the aristocratic families behind them. Haha, as expected, you knew. Do you think Your Majesty is particularly incompetent? The murderers of Your Majesty's woman and daughter are right before Your Majesty's eyes, yet Your Majesty remains indifferent. You are you, and I am I. You have your way of handling things, which I don't want to question, and I also have my way of handling things. The biggest reason for my return this time is that you are the biological father of this body, and my return this time is also to repay this kindness and see you off on your final journey. Qin Zheng smiled bitterly upon hearing this and said, Your Majesty knows that Crown Prince and Fourth Prince are no match for you. Promise Your Majesty that regarding the murder of your mother and imperial sister, you will only kill Consort Yin and the Empress, alright. Your Majesty won't stop you from seeking revenge, but if you act against the 8 great aristocratic families, it will shake the foundation of the imperial family. If you promise Your Majesty will immediately issue an imperial decree to abdicate in your favor. Moreover, the 8 great aristocratic families are far from as simple as they appear. The strength of each family is not much weaker than that of the imperial family. Qi and Yan country to the north are also eyeing us covetously. Once the 8 great aristocratic families are touched, the strength of Great Tang will definitely be greatly damaged. At that time, Qi and Yan country will definitely take the opportunity to march south. That will be the time of Great Tang's demise. This is also why Your Majesty has turned a blind eye to those aristocratic families. Qin Zheng was indeed a qualified emperor. He could abandon the woman who had been with him for decades just like that, and all of this was solely for the stability of his kingdom. Qin Tian asked himself if he could do this, and perhaps in this regard, he was not a qualified emperor. Compared to being a good emperor, Qin Tian was more inclined to be a good man. Sixth Prince. You must promise Your Majesty. Cough cough. Qin Tian looked at Qin Zheng, who was already on the verge of death on the bed, and said, Father Emperor, please don't speak anymore. Your subject will take his leave first. The imperial physician will arrive immediately. After Qin Tian finished speaking, he withdrew. After all, it was not good for Qin Tian to stay there at such a sensitive moment. Although he didn't care about what others thought, being gossiped about was unpleasant. Looking at Qin Tian's retreating figure, Qin Zheng stretched out his right hand as if trying to grasp something. Hearing the violent coughing from inside the sleeping quarters, Chief Eunuch Guo Rui quickly ran inside. Guo Rui looked at Qin Zheng on the bed and immediately shouted, Quick! Summon the imperial physician. At this moment, Crown Prince and Fourth Prince also received the news and rushed over, but they were all blocked outside the door. After some treatment by the imperial physician, Qin Zheng finally recovered slightly. Seeing this, Guo Rui immediately stepped forward and said, Your Majesty. Crown Prince and Fourth Prince are waiting outside the sleeping quarters. Qin Zheng waved his hand directly and said, Do not see them. Then this humble servant will go and ask the 2 Your Highnesses to leave. Qin Zheng waved his hand upon hearing this. Seeing this, Guo Rui bowed and slowly retreated. Walking out of the door, Guo Rui looked at Crown Prince and Fourth Prince kneeling before the door and said, To Your Highnesses. Your Majesty needs rest now, please leave quickly. Crown Prince and Fourth Prince also knew that if anyone in this country was most loyal to Qin Zheng, then the Guo Zongguan before them would undoubtedly be number 1, and no one would dare to claim second. His words were basically equivalent to the emperor's words, and in terms of status, Guo Zongguan's status was definitely above that of the empress. However, Crown Prince still said unwillingly, Guo Zongguan. Crown Prince Ji is worried about Father Emperor's health, please let us go in and see him. Yes. Guo Zongguan. Looking at the 2 people before him, Guo Zongguan sighed, Alas. To Your Highnesses. It's not that this old servant won't let you in, but Your Majesty has given the order. Please leave quickly, to Your Highnesses. After speaking, Guo Zongguan walked into the sleeping quarters and closed the door. Crown Prince and Fourth Prince looked at the tightly shut door, exchanged glances, and left in a hurry. Inside the room, Qin Zheng, hearing the commotion, said with difficulty, Guo Rui. Who do you think Your Majesty should pass this kingdom to? Guo Rui immediately knelt down upon hearing this and said, Your Majesty. This old servant dares not speak presumptuously. Qin Zheng smiled upon hearing this and said, all right. Guo Rui. You have been by your majesty's side since childhood. Throughout the world, you are the only one your majesty trusts. Guo Rui's eyes turned red upon hearing this and he said, this old servant thanks your majesty for your grace. Guo Rui. You watched your majesty grow up, come on. Tell me your thoughts on the heir to the throne. Your majesty pardons you of any crime. And this is also your majesty's command. Your majesty. This. Speak. This humble servant obeys your majesty. Guo Rui got up and stood by the bed, bowing and saying, then, your majesty, this old servant will presume to speak. Crown Prince Gu's temperament is too simple, and although he can be considered to have some small schemes, they are not suitable for important matters. Fourth Prince's courage is sufficient, but his wisdom is lacking. As for your highness, King Qi, he possesses both wisdom and courage. Just the fact that he could endure in the palace for 16 years without being discovered by the outside world shows the strength of his mind. Moreover, according to the news from Tianwang, Sixth Prince's cultivation has already reached the late innate stage, and he achieved such a feat in less than 5 years, showing that his talent is exceptionally rare in the world. Furthermore, under his governance, West Liang was managed in an orderly manner in less than 5 years. This shows that Sixth Prince is a capable ruler who can revitalize the country. After Guo Rui finished speaking, he immediately knelt down and said, Your Majesty. This old servant deserves death. Qin Zheng said upon hearing this, get up. Didn't your majesty already say that your majesty pardons you of any crime? Go. Summon the eunuch with official seal. Guo Rui's pupils constricted upon hearing this, but he still complied. Soon, the eunuch with official seal jogged all the way to Qin Zheng's bed. Qin Zheng struggled to sit up and said, draft an imperial decree for your majesty. Your majesty knows the end is near. Therefore, the throne is passed to Sixth Prince, King Qi, Qin Tian. Appoint. Crown Prince Qin Ji as King Qin. His territory is Jizhou. Appoint. Fourth Prince Qin Yang as King Han. His territory is Yuzhou. By imperial command. Guo Rui. This old servant is here. You shall read this imperial decree only when the dust has settled. During this time, if Sixth Prince is at a disadvantage, you shall lead Tianwang to fully support him. In recent years, Zhongren residents and Tai Temple have also become somewhat disobedient. At that time, you shall deal with those restless ones. Guo Rui also knew that Qin Zheng was also giving him a warning, but he still bowed and said, This humble servant obeys your majesty. After Qin Zheng finished speaking, he glanced at Guo Rui and then sat on the bed, losing his breath. Guo Rui stood up, walked to Qin Zheng's side, closed Qin Zheng's eyes with his hand, then knelt down and shouted, Your Majesty has passed away. The entire imperial palace became agitated because of this matter, and palace maids were wailing everywhere. Qin Tian, who had just left the palace, also received the news, but he did not return to the imperial palace immediately, but instead returned directly to the king's residence. Upon receiving the news, Crown Prince and Fourth Prince all began to act. In particular, the imperial guards began to seal all the city gates, and the city protection formation was also fully activated. After returning to the king's residence, Qin Tian looked at Zhang Han and the others gathered there and smiled, What are you all doing here? Are you idle? Go do what you need to do. Seeing this, Zhang Han immediately stepped forward and said, Your Highness. Shouldn't we do something? Dian Wei also stepped forward upon hearing this and said, Yes. Your Highness. As long as you give the order, I don't care if it's Crown Prince or Fourth Prince. Your general will cut them down. Qin Tian frowned as he looked at the few people full of fighting spirit and said, Go do what you need to do. Has the order been given to General Liu? Cao Zhengchun stepped forward and bowed upon hearing this, reporting to Your Highness. This humble servant has already sent the message to General Liu, and the 100,000 Ziliang iron cavalry have already withdrawn outside Hanggu Pass. Qin Tian nodded upon hearing this and said, Let those clowns jump around for a while first. When they all show their faces, we will deal with them. Yes, Your Highness. Chapter 20 The battle for the throne begins. At this time, in the Fourth Prince's mansion, General Wang Yuzhong looked at the Sixth Prince before him and said, Your Highness. Prince Qi's 100,000 iron cavalry have already retreated 50 li outside Hanggu Pass. Now, the guards within Prince Qi's mansion number less than 10,000, but the remaining guards are all experts. Prince Qi's actions have only two purposes. The first is that he has no intention of vying for the throne, but by leaving so many experts within Kyoto, he is telling us not to provoke him. The second is that he intends to reap the benefits of others' conflict, or perhaps he wants to capture us all. After saying this, Wang Yuzhong's pupils slightly contracted. However, the fourth prince smiled upon hearing this and said, so what? Once crowned Prince Ji inherits the throne and has the assistance of the Zongren residents and the Tai Temple, this small Prince Qi won't be able to cause any waves. Hearing the fourth prince's words, Wang Yuzhong couldn't help but think of the terrifying strength of the Zongren residents and the Tai Temple. One must know that those residing in the Tai Temple are chief eunuchs from previous dynasties, all of whom are fiercely loyal to the royal family. After countless generations of accumulation by the great Tang Dynasty, after each emperor passes away, the most loyal group of eunuchs around them will enter the Tai Temple and receive eternal offerings from the royal family. Wang Yuzhong looked at the fourth prince and bowed, saying, Your Highness. Our biggest trouble at the moment is that the Zanbei King's million-strong army is about to march south. They will arrive in Kyoto soon. HMPH. Good timing. My maternal grandfather's army is also about to arrive in Kyoto. We only need to rely on the city protecting array to hold out for 2 days. During this time, you must pay extra attention to the movements of the other 6 great aristocratic families. We will make a move against the crown prince tomorrow. Some old fellows in the Zongren residence and the Tai Temple are restless. Your Majesty. At this time, in the Crown Prince's mansion, Lu Zong and the Crown Prince were also plotting in secret. Crown Prince. Now that your Majesty has passed away without leaving a will, I have already mobilized all the forces of the other 6 aristocratic families to the Eastern Palace to prevent the fourth prince from making a move against you. National teacher, you've worked hard. The old ancestors from the Zongren residence and the Tai Temple have all expressed that they will protect me. After all, without Father Emperor's will, they are relatively more inclined towards Crown Prince Ji. Crown Prince. General Bai believes that caution is paramount in all matters. At present, the Zhenan King is marching north, and the spies planted in the Zhenan King's army have recently been completely removed. Although Prince Qi's stance has been made clear, we must also guard against his intention to reap the benefits of others' conflict. National teacher, rest assured. With the troops he currently has, he cannot do anything to us. I will deal with him after I have dealt with the fourth prince. Now he has lost the opportunity to contend for the throne, and this son is no longer a concern. Lu Zong opened his mouth, but the words that were about to come out were swallowed back down. The next day, Qin Tian put on mourning clothes with the help of Zhang Suyu and Xiao Kui. Leaving Cao Zhengchun to guard the house, Qin Tian, along with Dian Wei and Zhang Han, went to the imperial palace to escort Qin Zheng's remains to the imperial mausoleum. Along the way, Qin Tian felt the air filled with a chilling aura. Seeing this, Qin Tian couldn't help but curl the corner of his mouth. Qin Tian led his group to the Donghua Gate to await Qin Zheng's coffin. As Qin Zheng's massive coffin was carried out of the Donghua Gate, even Qin Tian, who had been bombarded by various information explosions in his previous life, couldn't help but exclaim, "This is truly magnificent." Dozens of burly soldiers were seen working together to slowly carry Qin Zheng's coffin to the front of the Donghua Gate. Qin Zheng's coffin was a full 10 meters long, over 6 meters wide, and 2 meters high. The dark coffin exuded a sense of heaviness. This coffin was made of high-quality Huainan spiritual wood, which has the effect of preserving the body for 1,000 years without decay and suppressing luck. Each cubic meter sells for 1,000 low-grade spirit stones, and the cost of Qin Zheng's coffin alone reached 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. Qin Tian followed the funeral procession to the imperial mausoleum outside the city. Along the way, the crown prince and the fourth prince made no moves, because the Zongren residents and the Tai Temple would not allow them to cause trouble. Along the way, Qin Tian sensed that there were over 100 Grandmaster realm experts protecting them in the dark. If anyone dared to cause trouble at this time, they would certainly die a terrible death. After a series of complicated rituals, Qin Zheng's coffin was finally buried. His concubines who had no children during his lifetime were all sent to the imperial mausoleum to be buried with him. 10 days later, when the imperial mausoleum was closed, it would be their death day. Under the Ministry of Rites, series of procedures, Qin Tian finally finished a day of worship after a ca how many kowtows. After returning to Prince Qi's mansion and not even having a chance to sit down, Qin Tian received news that the Zhenbei king had stationed an army of 800,000 outside Kyoto and would attack the city in a few days. The Zhenan king was also only 1,000 li away from Kyoto and would arrive in Kyoto within 2 days. Qin Tian looked at the note in his hand and then at the moon outside the window, muttering, "The good show is about to begin." At this time, in the fourth prince's mansion, experts from the Kyoto Zhao family and Wang family were gathered together. Wang Yuzhong looked at the fourth prince and said, "Your Highness. All the forces of the Wang family and Zhao family have been assembled, just waiting for your personal order." The fourth prince looked at the nearly 100 Grandmaster realm martial artists and more than 10 Po Shu realm martial artists before him. His excitement was simply beyond words. One must know that he, whose cultivation was only at the innate realm, was now able to command these hundreds of Grandmaster realm and more than 10 Po Shu realm martial artists. How could he not be excited in his heart? Is this power? Because the Wang family and Zhao family almost controlled the entire army of the great Tang Dynasty, the overall strength of these two families already exceeded the sum of the other 6 great aristocratic families. This is also why the fourth prince dared to challenge the crown prince, who was supported by the 6 great aristocratic families, even though he was only supported by 2 aristocratic families. At this moment, a guard rushed into the crown prince's mansion and said, "Report." Reporting to the crown prince. The eastern palace is surrounded by 100,000 imperial guards. The crown prince immediately jumped up upon hearing this and said, "Haha. Good timing. Send the signal immediately. Gather the men and follow me to fight our way out of the imperial city and rendezvous with the Zhenbei king." Following the crown prince's order, the 6 great aristocratic families and some experts from the Zhongren residence and the Tai temple led the way, followed by tens of thousands of martial artists, fighting their way out of the eastern palace. Before long, a roaring sound was heard from the sky. That was the sound of Po Shu realm experts clashing. The Zhenbei king outside the city also immediately began to attack the city after seeing the signal. In the streets and alleys of Kyoto, the forces of both sides engaged in the most primitive combat. Neither side dared to use martial techniques, as it was easy to cause accidental injuries in such a narrow space. Moreover, using martial techniques in such a large battle is very draining on internal energy, and in this kind of battlefield environment, once your internal energy is exhausted, only death awaits you. When the forces of both sides engaged, although the quality of the crown prince's forces was higher than that of the fourth prince, they lacked coordination. Although the fourth prince's low-level combat power was not as good as the crown prince's, the troops he had were the imperial guards, and the power of the military formation was evident at this time. Therefore, for a while, neither side could do much to the other. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.